So I'd like to open the regular board meeting of December 11th. We have any public comment for closed session? No, hearing none, we will adjourn to closed session. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 11th, 2025 Board of Education regular board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:03, and we have language access. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. We have interpretation into Spanish and also ASL through Zoom. Buenas tardes. Tenemos interpretación al español disponible por medio de Zoom. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Maldonado, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please stand and face the flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. There are no closed session action items to report. And Dr. Maldonado.
At this time, there has been a request by Student Board Member Carlos Vasquez. I'd like to turn it over to him.
Good evening. For today's report, I'd like to honor my friend Tayden Tomlin, who tragically passed away in an accident over fall break. Tayden grew up in Santa Barbara and was a senior at San Marcos. On campus, he was involved in swimming, water polo, the Entrepreneurship Academy, and the Culinary Academy. He loved being outdoors, surfing, skateboarding, backpacking, tide pooling, and fishing, and he volunteered at the Sea Center. Tayden and I shared a few classes throughout high school, but I got to know him better at the start of this school year. I ran into him skateboarding on State Street, and we stopped and talked for a while. Watching him attempt tricks just weeks into skating, tricks that I hadn't even tried in the year that I had been skating, his passion and enthusiasm were immediately clear. From then on, nearly every weekend I went to the skate park, Tayden was there, already drenched in sweat. I remember one time, after I finally went down one of the biggest features in the park, Tayden rushed over from the opposite corner to ask if it was my first time and to congratulate me. When I first told my mom what had happened, she knew exactly who I meant and rushed to hug me. That is because just a few weeks earlier, I'd come home from skating with Tayden and told her how excited I was to have made a new friend. Over the past couple of weeks, I've had the chance to learn even more about Tayden from connecting with his friends and mentors. One of his closest friends, Alex, described him in this way. Tayden was one of those people you'd never catch without a smile on his face. He had such a love and knowledge for the outdoors, especially the ocean, and loved to share it with others. His energy was contagious and positive, and he made friends with everyone he met. Tayden inspired all of us to live life to the fullest and to never say no to an adventure. Tayden will be deeply missed by his family, his friends, his teammates, his classmates, his teachers, and by our community as a whole. Even though I truly got to know him this year, his smile, passion, and kindness will stay with me for the rest of my life. Thank you, Tayden, for touching the lives of so many. Your impact on San Marcos and the Santa Barbara community is profound. And to everyone here, please tell your loved ones how much they mean to you in honor of Tayden. Thank you. Now, I would like to ask us to take a moment of silence. Thank you.
I want to recognize the Tomlin family who's here with us today. Thank you so much for being here, and we deeply feel your pain.
Thank you for those beautiful words and our condolences, our love, and our support. That takes us to E1, which is the annual organization portion of this meeting. We at this point in the year, we do our elections of Board of Trustees, President, Vice President, and Clerk. And so we're
Turn it
going.
over to me.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Maldonado.
Board members, we will now proceed with the election of the board president. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any nominations for the office of President of the Board of Trustees.
Yes, I have a nomination for Mr. Banning. I just wanted to say thank you to my fellow board members for giving me your trust this past year as board president. It is an honor that's not lost on me. We had many accomplishments this year, and we had goals, or I had goals as your board president that we made progress on and maybe didn't quite get there, and I feel very confident being able to work with Mr. Banning as the vice president, that he has the skill set, the vision, and the temperament that is perfect for our board currently. Where we are on our journey, we have lots of positive progress to point to, and I feel steadfast in your leadership, Mr. Banning, and so I'd like to nominate you for board president.
Do I have any other nominees? Seeing none, Mr. Banning, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
I will now entertain a motion for appointment of the nominee of the Board of Office of President for the 26th calendar year. Do I have a
So moved.
motion? Motion made by Mr. Escobedo. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Ms. Munoz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimously passes. And now I turn it over to our new president. We're going to do a shift of chairs. And so everybody stands up, moves over one. Mr. Banning takes the board president's seat. And Mr. Escobedo, you take the seat next to Carlos. And now it's my distinct honor to hand it over to you to take over the rest.
Okay, well, no matter how long I've been in education, this is a nerve-wracking kind of moment. So I do have a couple of comments. I want to thank my colleagues for placing your trust in me. Even with decades in public education and leadership, stepping into this role feels humbling. I'm honored, and I promise to give you my best. I hope that when I hand this gavel over to the next president, I leave behind a stronger board and more sustainable governance practices that contribute to the advancement of strategic district and board priorities. My deep gratitude goes to President Escobedo. Gabe, your calm leadership has been a gift to this board. You brought steadiness when things were turbulent and kept our focus firmly on students. Serving alongside you this year has shaped the way I will approach the role. When I look out across our district, I see extraordinary people at every level. Teachers, staff, leaders, families, and community partners showing up every day with heart. Whether in classrooms or on fields and stages, in offices or kitchens, or in caring for our campuses and programs, thousands of individuals contribute to the well-being and success of our more than 11,000 students. This work is powerful, it is noble, and it's deeply human. And like all human systems, we face moments of strain. Disagreements within the board, frustrations between board and administration, real tension in parts of our community. None of this makes us broken. It reminds us that trust must be rebuilt continuously, not assumed. My priority as president is to strengthen that trust through clarity, consistency, fairness, and respect. I want our governance processes to be clear and predictable. I want our meetings to feel purposeful and welcoming. And I want our bylaws, protocols, and commitments to student well-being to guide us, not personalities, assumptions, or pressures from the moment. I intend to work with the board toward alignment of our approved public comment procedures as documented in our bylaws. And I want to continue to welcome strong views, disagreement, and passionate voices. And I want us to ask that it comes respectfully, without sarcasm, anger, accusations, or personal attacks. Respect is not a barrier to being heard. In fact, it is what makes being heard possible. For us on the board, our diverse experiences can enrich our deliberations, but our questions and comments must remain tied to agenda items, our collective responsibilities, and the purpose of the meeting. Board meetings are meetings of the board in the public, not meetings with the public. They are not a platform for unrelated commentary or performance. Staying focused is not about restricting expression. It's about fulfilling our responsibility to govern effectively. When we model focus, discipline, and respect, we make it easier for our community to do the same. I believe our community wants us to move forward by showing curiosity rather than assumption and respect rather than escalation. We can rebuild trust and strengthen our governance together. Trust grows when people feel seen, respected, and treated fairly. That is the environment I want us to create together for the sake of our students. And now, I will entertain a motion for appointment of a nominee to the board office of Vice President. I'm reading my own one. It's okay. It's down here. It's the next page. At this time, are there nominations for the office of Vice President of the Board of Trustees? I have a nomination. I would like to nominate Rose Munoz for this position. Are there other nominees?
I would like to nominate Celeste Caffrey.
Other nominees? Nominee 1, do you accept the nomination? Yes. Nominee 2, Celeste, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
I will now entertain a motion. Well, let's see. We need to do a vote, don't we? A roll call vote? All right. So nominee number 1 is Rose Munoz. Actually, I guess the roll call is for each member to state the name of the preferred person. Okay. Do I start or shall I go with the board? Okay. All right, Rose. Who do you vote for? You can.
I vote for myself.
Trustee Beal?
Celeste Caffrey.
Trustee Caffrey?
I vote for myself.
Trustee Escobedo?
Rose Munoz.
And I vote for Rose Munoz. All right. So, Rose, thank you. Congratulations. You accept the nomination.
Yes, thank you.
I will now entertain, let's see, motion, no, do we need to? Right, okay, so we move on to the clerk. At this time, are there nominations for the office of clerk of the Board of Trustees?
I would like to vote for, to nominate Sunita Buell for the clerk.
Other nominations? Trustee Beal, do you accept the nomination?
I'm not sure what it means, but I accept the nomination.
So we have no other nominees. Is there a vote all in favor of, oh wait, I guess we need a motion.
I'll move to approve Dr. Beal as the clerk for the Board of Education.
A second.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Congratulations to Trustee Beal. Huh? Are we doing, and so that's, so we're going to move spots at this point for these?
We're in our seats.
Oh, there you are. Okay, perfect. All right. Oh, I'm back to my agenda. See, I told you, I'm nervous. I'm supposed to be good at this kind of stuff, right? I'll just do it. Well, what happened to it? It's right here. Okay. All right. Item number 5E5, which is appointment of the superintendent as secretary to the Board of Trustees. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to have the superintendent be the secretary of the Board of Trustees.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, we have the schedule of meetings for 25, 26. This follows our traditional pattern of second and fourth Tuesdays.
It does for the most part. I do want to show you or point out that we do have a in September we only have one meeting because we have 2 holidays in September and a study session. So that's a change that Sandra and I are proposing to the regular pattern of agendas, of board meetings.
Any questions? Is there a motion to approve the meeting dates as presented?
I move to approve the meeting dates as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Our next item is appointments of board representatives and alternatives of various committees. You have in the agenda and in front of you a list of the committees and who the representatives are for this year. Rather than taking the time at this meeting to read through and discuss who is in them and find out, oh, okay. All right, so let's go to public comment. This is item, do you have it? Is this virtual? Okay.
Okay, so, public comment on E7, we have Roseanne Crawford. Ms. Crawford, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
we
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I was muted. I apologize. Roseanne Crawford with the Coalition for Neighborhood Schools. I find it concerning that there is an ad hoc committee for the housing game when we don't have our own house in order. At the last board meeting, you heard about all the brokenness from Cobway Committee in advancing Black wellness and excellence, not only that none of the board members attended their gala, but parents had reported bullying incidents and ethnic slurs that nothing was being done about. No follow-through. All the proclamations mean nothing if there's no action associated with improvement and accountability. Why not a committee for community communications and effectiveness? The website is vague. If you're looking for specific help, teachers or general public, once people contact a department, it's not unusual not to have follow-up. And there is already a positive and effective mechanism in place to expand on. Board members Beal and Caffrey this past year have been hosting meetups at Tucker's Grove Park through signing up through the district platform. It has been very successful. Teachers, interested community members, and groups have gathered to discuss issues within the system that are broken or ineffective. There is a common theme with all of them. Even at the superintendent level, calls go unanswered or emails not returned. I spoke with one parent that had a bullying problem with his daughter, and it took 3 months to get a meeting with Dr. Maldonado. We can do better. We need to do better for our students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There are no other comments.
All right, no other comments. I want to go back to the list of committees as they are currently staffed. Rather than taking time in this meeting to reevaluate them, I will be reaching out to individual board members that are on committees about their interest in continuing or changing, and we'll bring back recommendations at our next regular meeting on January 13th. That brings us to the student board member report. Carlos, thank you for your earlier comments, and just give you an opportunity to finish up with any other comments you have. Thank you.
Right. At our most recent Student Advisory Council meeting, we discussed the application process for our Scholars Helping Scholars program. Towards the end of the meeting, we had detailed drafts of an official application, a follow-up form to organize students, and a teacher and counselor recommendation form. Next Wednesday at our meeting, we hope to review edits from the college and career counselors and finalize and test the application. I also had the privilege of attending the California School Boards Association Annual Education Conference last week, where I spent time with student board members from across the state. I learned from the variety of initiatives and policies these students are enacting within their own districts, and I hope to both collaborate on new ideas with these student board members and implement aspects of their structures to our district's student voice platform. Thank you.
And next is the superintendent's report.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Carlos, also for bringing Taden's parents and such wise words from a young man, and such a loss for us. Another loss that we suffered at Santa Barbara Unified was that on Thanksgiving Day, November 27th, the Adams Elementary community suffered a heartbreaking loss. Their beloved head custodian, Baltasar Esqueda, known as Balta, passed away after an illness associated with cancer. For 17 years, Balta was an integral part of the Adams family. His dedication, kindness, and positive spirit touched the lives of countless of students, staff, and families, always greeting everyone with a warm smile. Balta took immense pride in his work and in keeping our school a place we could all be proud of. He was known for his generous heart, his willingness to help anyone in need, and the joy he brought to our halls each and every day. Balta especially loved playing soccer with our students, creating memories they will live on in their hearts. His laughter, work ethic, and love for our school community made Adams a better place for all of us. We will deeply miss him, but his legacy of care, pride, and kindness will forever remain a part of Adams Elementary. Balta will always be in our hearts. I'd like to ask us to take a moment of silence for Balta. Thank you. The holidays can be hard on mental health, especially when our communities face tragedies like we have seen over the past few weeks. As a reminder, we have resources available on our website. Talking to a therapist, counselor, or just reaching out for help is vital. If you see a student struggling, please visit the website to get them more support, or if you need some help for yourself. As we close out this calendar year, I want to take a moment to express my deep gratitude to each of you, our teachers, staff, and leaders, for the compassion and care you show our students every day. Even during difficult times, our community continues to show up for one another with kindness, generosity, and resilience. And that is what I love most about our community in Santa Barbara, what we call home. I hope you take this time this season to rest, reflect, and reconnect with loved ones. I do want to announce that over the upcoming winter break, we are encouraging students, staff, parents, and everyone to take time to unplug from their screens and their devices and unfold the pages of a really great book. Our new initiative, Unplug and Unfold, invites everyone to rediscover the joy of reading for pleasure. We've asked our librarians to share book recommendations for students of all ages. I see Ms. Hatcher Day here in the room, who will be featured in our upcoming social media. She's given us some great recommendations for books for students of all ages, which will be shared with families next week. We hope this initiative inspires moments of calm, imagination, and connection throughout the break. And I know that I got a great idea for Ms. Hatcher Day for gifts. This year will be in the form of books to my friends and family who hopefully are not watching and haven't spoiled it for them already. So with that, I want to conclude my board report.
Thank you. That will bring us to public comment on items not on the agenda. As we work to bring greater clarity and consistency to our meetings, we'll be returning to time limits outlined in our board bylaws. Since public awareness of that shift has been limited, we'll proceed to with our current practice this evening. However, in upcoming meetings, you can expect us to move toward these bylaw-aligned time limits, so we can hear from as many speakers as possible in a fair and manageable way and maintain meeting efficiency. So our current bylaws, as they're printed on the comment cards and in our board bylaws, allow up to 20 minutes of public comment on non-agenda items and up to 20 minutes on any single agenda item. As we work to reestablish our bylaw protocols, we will also consider whether any modifications are needed to balance community input with efficient, effective meetings.
I apologize. I missed Miss Amy McMillan. I apologize. She's a librarian here as well. And she's doing some of our social media. And I'm sorry I missed you looking out in the audience. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you for understanding. We're in new roles. Here I'm going to be calling the first three public comments, and then I will let you know when you have. Now, can you hear me?
Is the light on?
Yes, it's on. Can you hear me now? Okay. I don't know. A bunch. Does that matter? Okay, hold on a sec. Sorry.
I think with that number, our practice has been to adjust the time to 2 minutes or 90 seconds. We'll do that for tonight without the 20-minute limit at this point.
Okay, so I will go ahead and call the first three. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I am hearing impaired, so it's hard for me to gauge. The first three are Casey Kilgore, Amy McMillan, and Rachel Hatcher Day. Okay, so Casey Kilgore. Okay, we'll go on to Amy McMillan.
Hi, is this on? All right. Hi, my name is Amy McMillan. I'm a credentialed teacher librarian, a Google certified innovator, and a National Board certified teacher in English language arts. I'm speaking tonight in support of hiring credentialed teacher librarians for our elementary school sites. Our elementary sites used to have credentialed teacher librarians when I was hired back in 1999. They were laid off at some point, I think, after the financial crisis of 2008. And they were replaced with classified staff who are library technicians, and they are hourly staff. Eventually, our district hired a district level teacher librarian to oversee the elementary sites, but she left at some point during COVID and her position was never replaced. So as things stand right now, how do we know that all students are receiving equitable library services? How do we know that they have equitable access to library databases and instruction regarding digital literacy and information literacy? How are the school library collections balanced in regard to diversity of interests, reading levels, and representation? When the issue of elementary teacher librarians comes up during bargaining, Please consider research-based literacy supports, which include credentialed teacher librarians in elementary school libraries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rachel Hatcher Day. And I'm just going to announce the next three. Let's see. Stephen DeLita, AJ Pateras, and Joe Zamora.
Hello, I'm Rachel Hatcherday. I'm the teacher librarian at Goleta Valley Junior High. I'm also the vice president of the Southern Region for the California School Library Association, a long title. I'm a librarian with a master's in library and information science and a teacher librarian services credential, and I urge you to hire elementary teacher librarians. Keith Curry Lance is a researcher who for years has gathered and analyzed data about school librarians' impact on student outcomes. Back as far as 2011, Lance found that schools with librarians had students with higher reading scores. In the same study, Lance found that when schools lost librarians, their students' reading scores declined. The most noticeable decline occurred among EMLs. In other words, students suffered when a school lost its librarian, and the ones who suffered the most were the students most in need of literacy assistance. Our elementary libraries are currently staffed with classified librarians whose work is invaluable. I know because I was a classified library tech for 2 years.
20 seconds.
Our elementary library techs work 9 months of the year, and we know that school is open longer than that, the 30 hours that they work. A teacher librarian is also needed because they're trained in collection development, budgeting, grant writing, teaching databases, teaching research skills, and developing digital citizenship lessons. A week ago, I was told that literacy is the #1 priority for our district, but there's no elementary teacher librarians. So how can we make that true moving forward? Thank you.
Stephen DeLira.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen DeLira, retired Deputy Chief Probation Officer, 30 years of service, and then came to the nonprofit world. Today, I'm here on behalf of Communify and on behalf of the South Coast Youth Safety Partnership to talk about El Joven Noble, hoping that the school board will vote to provide the funding for that curriculum in your school district. The Joven Noble has it's a gender-specific programming for boys, has great learning moments for boys, teaches them to be honorable young men, what it means to keep your palabra, what it even means to have your word. In the community, we teach against violence, we teach healthy relationships, we teach respect and responsibility, and what it means to be proud, to be who you are as a young man as you go in the community. I can attest over my 38 years of working with youth and families in Santa Barbara County that this curriculum works. Our boys and our girls from Girasol, our parents from Cara y Corazon, and our people that participate in circle keeping conferences. We also know those as, well, we know them as coming together. Anyhow, I would love to tell you more about this at any time you'd like to call me. Please call me. Let's talk about this, but please support the program on behalf of the young boys and girls in your schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it will be followed by AJ Pateras.
Good evening, everyone. My name is AJ Pateras. I'm here tonight to speak about coaching stipends in general, and how they directly affect retention, hiring, and program stability across our campuses. In my role, I am a teacher at Dos Pueblos High School. I'm also privileged to be the head football coach at Dos Pueblos High School, and I support anywhere between 120 to 180 students and student athletes in my role. To understand why the impact of stipends is important is to understand the role that a coach or a mentor or someone who is doing things outside the classroom in addition to the classroom setting. Coaching has become a full-time job in addition to my teaching responsibilities. Coaching was seasonal and has become full-time. In-season responsibilities, roughly 40 to 60 hours of time given in the full week. That includes on top of my teaching responsibilities. That time is spent in student supervision, oversight of practices, game planning, film study, parent communication, travel, fundraising, game operations, and that is just a small sample of the responsibilities we have. Out of season, the work continues.
20
It is not
seconds.
seasonal. Out of season work continues to push those boundaries with off-season workouts. Santa Barbara Unified is comparable to other districts, but we have great examples across our local communities where districts are tying compensation to salary structures and increasing those as we go. Florida has also passed a law, and those are other examples where we are falling behind. To close, teachers like coaches are passionate about the impact they have on our campuses, and when programs lose good quality coaches, they lose impacts on their campus, impacts on their students, and ultimately we impact our student experience. So to close, I want strong programs. I am part of strong programs. I'm privileged to work where I am at. And if we continue to invest in those who spend those hours with our kids, we'll see great outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Joe Zamora, and the following 3 speakers will be Rich Lashwa, Deborah Reed, and Daniel Barnett.
Hello. Good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Joe Zamora. I'm in season, so that's why my voice is like this. I'm not sick. I'm the boys basketball coach at Dos Pueblos High School. This is my 21st year. It's my alma mater. I went to Kellogg, Goleta Valley, and Dos Pueblos. I have great pride in our program. Unfortunately, I've been really disappointed with the fact that the stipend pay for my coaches is so low. I've had 9 coaches over the year who just had to step away because they couldn't afford it in this town, especially young coaches, because of how much time they spend. I just want to share some of the experiences or the things that we have to do. I have to have district requirements, or they have to fulfill district requirements. We have to have certifications, which there's 8 currently. They have to do paperwork for travel if we want to go out of town. We have grade checks, picture days, media guides, senior nights, concession stand organization, player meetings at lunch if your player didn't make it. I've had meetings with parents if they didn't agree with how we chose the team, with district administration as well. And my lower level coaches feel at times threatened by parents. And I know they're getting away from the pay thing, but it's just really hard because they want to make money, and it's really hard for a younger player or coach, I should say, to be employed. The other thing is just that
20 seconds.
Thank you. I lost coaches this summer because of they just couldn't. They were at UCSB as grad students, and so it's not nepotism. But I had to hire my brother as my JV coach, and my youngest son as his assistant coach because I can't find coaches. And it's not for the lack of we don't have a good program. It's just that people don't want to step out and spend that time. The last part is it'd be really important for us as for the stipend part is if we had coaches that were teachers, just like AJ said, because we want to be around them, we want to be a positive influence, we want to be mentors for these players, and not just my basketball players, but all of our student athletes. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rich Lashwa.
In my theater class, a simple rule transformed my classroom. It's okay to not like someone else's idea. However, you can't shoot down other solutions without your better one. I've been here nearly every board meeting for almost 20% of my 15-year career, trying to get arts access to all kids. The restoration of the junior high 7-period day is the most direct solution. It's not cheap, but it gives arts access to all kids, bolsters struggling VAPA programs, and gives all our teachers a much-needed second prep period. The bottom line is, nearly 3 years in, nobody's presented that better solution. The price tag's about $2 million. Hard to find. Have you considered asking for it? The Santa Barbara Education Foundation exists for decades because our community understands that public schools will always need help. We've also passed multiple tax bonds in my career because the public votes to prioritize education. Budgets are moral documents. When we value something, we find ways to fund it. You know what's more expensive than $2 million? A generation of kids raised in a system with no voice or means of expression for its non-white, English learning, economically challenged, and special needs kids. We must invest in strengthening the areas of our students' brains which picture the world they haven't created yet, or else we doom them to replicate the inequities and limitations they've been raised in today. I'm still waiting for that better solution. The students need that 7th period, the union is showing their support, and the community consistently backs education, particularly the arts. The rest is up to you. Let's go change the world.
Thank you.
Deborah Reed.
Happy holidays. Many times when I attend these board meetings, one of the main topics of discussion is literacy. We look at charts depicting standardized test scores for reading, we analyze data related to EML students, or debate about which new reading curriculum to adopt. Why are we so focused on this topic? Because we, our district, our admin, board members, teachers, parents, all recognize and value the importance of improving the literacy skills of the children in our community. So how do we achieve our goal? We could start by ensuring that every elementary campus has a full-time librarian. School libraries and the librarians that run them offer a haven for students to establish or regain their passion for reading. Instilling the habit of reading in our students at the elementary level is akin to planting a seed that can be nurtured throughout their academic career. When a student has access to an elementary school librarian, they have an ambassador who provides a quiet environment in which to study. They have a coach who will guide them through the development of their digital literacy and research skills. They have a trusted adult who can direct them to resources to entertain or educate themselves.
20 seconds.
A librarian promotes exploration, imagination, critical thinking, and curiosity, all of which are skills that are essential to improving performance in core academics. With the guidance of librarians, we can instill a passion for reading and consequently eradicate the need for future remediation of learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Barnett.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the chance to talk tonight. My name is Daniel Barnett. I'm the director of the Visual Arts and Design Academy at Santa Barbara High School and a teacher there. I'm here to just advocate tonight for also consideration of fair and kind of updated stipend schedule. I remember a time when there wasn't a stipend schedule for positions like mine, and it was hard to wonder how to sustain the extra hours that we did. I'm thankful that there's a stipend now, but if you did the math, you'd probably get through November if you were to kind of work that out hourly with the extra hours that we put in. And it really, when we think about our district's priority that we place on belonging, I really think it's the special programs that like VADA and other ones like that that are doing the best work in that area, that are really making our students feel like they belong. And those are teachers. Those are teacher leaders that are running those programs, and we don't really have any other tools for acknowledging the extra above and beyond, and it's really above and beyond because teachers are already doing above and beyond work, to acknowledge that extra that they're doing. So I want to thank you for my bosses and the board for considering that when we're in negotiations coming up.
15 seconds.
That's it. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Okay, the next three speakers will be Brittany Miner, Robin Seltzer, and Celeste Hall. Oh, I'm sorry, Celeste Hall will be virtual.
Hi, my name is Brittany Miner, and I'm a teacher at Roosevelt and a parent of a senior and junior DP. First, I would like to thank you all for attending the All-City Marching Band Field Show on Monday. My son was performing for the 4th year in a row. Music is so important to him. He started playing in elementary school on the clarinet and then continued in junior high. And he's taken many music classes in high school, picking up a few other instruments along the way. He also plays the oboe and youth symphony. Music is his passion. He is planning on continuing with music in college, going into music composition. Providing music for all students is so important. Please keep fighting for music to be available for all students in every grade in our district. But what I'm really here for tonight is for your help with elementary teachers and students. I would like to request that all elementary schools have teacher librarians. Librarians are so knowledgeable, and a librarian that is also a credentialed teacher, think of all the ways that they could support staff and students. A teacher librarian would have a different kind of relationship with our students. They would be someone a student could not only go to for book recommendations, but for support on writing and research assignments. In past years, as a fourth grade teacher, I assigned research on
20
mountain
seconds.
ranges, and they would just copy the pages that came up on the page. They look at like the AI results and summaries and Wikipedia. So really appreciate if teacher librarians would support with that. And then lastly, elementary teachers would love more prep time. I teach all subjects, and each curriculum has at least 5 to 6 pages that I have to look at in order to teach for each day of the week. And I would love more time because I'm the type of person that will go above and beyond. I brought work with me tonight because I want to do the best for my students and would just really appreciate being not taken advantage of. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Robin Seltzer. And apologies if I'm not pronouncing that right.
Hello, I'm Robin Seltzer from Dos Pueblos High School. I'm actually not here to speak on my own behalf tonight, but for 2 other teachers who were unable to come on the topic of teacher stipends. So on behalf of Mandy Dominguez, who is a dual enrollment digital art teacher at Dos Pueblos High School, she says, "This year I'm teaching 16 dual enrollment classes." 16. Currently, I receive $25 per student who enrolls for SBCC credit, capped at 20 students. That's $500 per class. Many of my classes have 20 to 30 students, so working for the extra students, signing up for City College, managing SBCC applications, uploading syllabi, recording grades, recording weekly attendance, and sharing my Canvas courses is uncompensated. The workload is especially heavy at the end of each term, often consuming weekends, and teaching 16 dual enrollment classes is exhausting. Increasing the stipend per student would better reflect the workload and help fairly compensate teachers. On behalf of Emily Libera, who is a DP theater teacher, she did some math that she shared with me. Her stipend is $4,675 for the hours spent outside of the school day on auditions, rehearsals, and shows.
15 seconds.
In 2024-25, she, when adding up her hours from Our Town, Mamma Mia, open mic nights, holiday package, the student show, and an improv event, she came up with 277 hours outside of class time. And when she did the math, it came out to about $16.87 per hour, which is less than I pay my gardener, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't have a degree in gardening.
Thank
So he is
you.
lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a Doug Carmine, and I'm not sure if that's. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Am I the last speaker?
Yes. I'm sorry. The last speaker in person.
Got it. Every Santa Barbara Unified Library needs a library technician and a teacher librarian. The space needs of the library are different than a classroom. How can they watch all corners? Teacher librarians increase EML access to the core curriculum. In my case, after 31 years of Santa Barbara High, we just learned how to use databases and adjust Lexile levels, but we all could be together on anti-blackness and language. That's microaggressions. Library technicians build crucial socio-emotional connections. These literacy caregivers need to go to the bathroom. Libraries can't close. What? Come on. I am going to be gone with all of the ELA department of the whole district to learn IELD after the fact. Let's work hard. Studies show that a robust independent reading program is the #1 way to increase EML fluency, both in L1 and L2. We can do this. We know how to do this. It's worth it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we will go to virtual comment. Celeste Hall.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
My comments tonight are about concerns about Santa Barbara's unified legal obligation to hand over educational records to legal parents. attendance records, counseling records, if a child's been illegally registered in your district, that if a child is having chronic absences up to 14 truancies, if they are legally being reported as state statute and federal law require, that all legal parent information is reported to any school that a child is registered in. And when a legal parent reaches out to the superintendent, that they receive some sort of communication back. So my comments are that these are federal laws and state laws that the district must follow. And with my experience, they have not been. As a legal parent to a child registered in your district, I have not received 90% of this information after repeated requests to the district.
Thank you. Okay, we will go on to the next virtual comment. Roseanne Crawford on a non-agenda item.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Actions speak louder than words. I want to thank board members Banning, Caffrey, and Beal for supporting myself and other speakers by their motion at the last meeting that allowed the Coalition for Neighborhood School Speakers 90 seconds after our item was presented. It's a start. A community dialogue needs to be continued around reevaluating boundaries, declining enrollment, and transportation. With all the new Zoom contract details this year, staff would already have all the internal data to see where students live, what schools they're being transported to improve efficiency and save money. The entire district is fully integrated, negating the original mechanism in the 70s for transporting students to other schools for ethnic and racial balance. To continue this is actually discriminatory. Boundary adjustments are important to evaluate with declining enrollment where students are living, particularly with all the new housing that's coming on downtown. This is the work that will improve community relations and support student and families in many ways that this district serves. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, Christina Manilay. Okay, we will go on to Charles Clow.
Howdy, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Cloud. I'm the Political Awareness Director for the Santa Barbara Teachers Association. It's my 9th year as a teacher in Santa Barbara Unified, and I'm speaking tonight in support of greater staffing for teacher librarians at elementary school sites. When I was just starting in Santa Barbara Unified, I had some good lesson ideas, and I had some weak lesson ideas, and I had some middling lesson ideas that could use a refresh. And I quickly learned that the best person on my campus to talk to was my teacher librarian, who was able to turn my B lessons into A lessons and do it all while making it seem like I was the one that had such a great idea in the first place. And it makes me sad that elementary teachers might not even know what they're missing. Like, according to Amy, we haven't had teacher librarians at elementary school sites for, 20 years it sounded like. So I really feel for those teachers and for those schools, especially because a lot of the literacy issues that we encounter in high school, we might not need to remediate if we had a better strategy for teaching literacy for younger grades. And I think hiring more teacher librarians at elementary levels would achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, that brings us to board correspondence and comments. We have any comments from the board? Trustee Munoz.
Yes, I would like to speak about the California School Boards Association conference that I attended along with our superintendent, Mr. Escobedo, Mr. Banning, and our student board member extraordinaire, Carlos. It was a great, great conference, much discussion about many of the issues that our schools are facing. Really an opportunity for superintendents and board members to come together to find out, what's going on, how to address the issues that we have, especially in terms of the limited budget and due to our current administration and the state of California and such. I would also like to recognize Miss Edison, who was a presenter on one of the workshops that we attended. And thank you so much, Miss Edison, first of all. I'd like to talk about the luncheons that I had the honor of attending. The first luncheon was the California Latino School Boards Association, who had a speaker, the director of Immigrants Rising, Dr. Ileana Perez, spoke from the heart about her own experience in trying to get an education in this country as an undocumented student, and all the barriers along the way that she faced, so much as including like a high school graduate, getting her bachelor's and trying to move on and getting her doctorate degree, and how that has shaped her career and how it has also affected her personally. Along with that, along with the superintendent, I attended the Asian Pacific Islander School Board Association breakfast, and where our ethnic studies program was recognized for its excellent work. There was a recognition for a program at Berkeley, Berkeley School District, and we were the other district that was also recognized for that. How this ties in for me, and I'm sorry, I'm not usually shaky and nervous. This evening, I don't know what's going on. But anyhow, I'd like to speak about the current crisis in our community regarding ICE. Just this week, we've had two issues, 2 days in a row where they've been on the west side, yesterday and the day before. Right when our school board meeting was starting this evening, I received a notification that that ICE was on the Santa Barbara Community College campus. I see that this really, this affects not only the students and the families themselves that are undocumented, but also the neighbors, the other students that are in the class that are aware of what's going on. Our community is very small. Of course, they're focusing on the most vulnerable. I'm sorry, but they are focusing on the west side, the east side, and also Old Town Goleta. There is trauma that is going on every day. There are food drives that are happening. There's toy drives being organized at Casa de la Raza. If you're able to, make a donation or drop, unwrapped, I believe it's an unwrapped toy there. There's many families that are not really even thinking about Christmas or the New Year at this time. So I really want to bring awareness, I want to bring awareness to that. I personally don't know where this is going. I had in my own family, we have I call him my nephew, who I believe graduated from San Marcos, who just about 2 weeks ago, after, over 35 years, was able to get residency in this country. And he shared a video of just the relief from that. He wasn't able to attend a wedding this summer because it was in, oh my gosh, near Carlsbad, which is too close to the border for him to even consider going there. And just, that times how many thousands that are being affected by this. I feel that as a school board trustee, I am personally, responsible to our constituents as many of us are, and I know that our teachers are also concerned about this, our principals and such. And so I just, it's just hard for me to go on right now. But just bringing that up in terms of, the holidays and how things are going with the community at this time.
I just want to welcome Trustee Banning as our board president and say that I really appreciate what your welcome message, and you said focus, discipline, and respect. I think we all can really get behind this, and I look forward to a productive year under your leadership. And congratulations to Trustee Munoz, and thank you, Trustee Escobedo, for your service last year.
Thank you. Other board comment? I will be brief. I would like to also acknowledge the experience at the CSBA workshops this last week. Had an opportunity to hear many fine presenters and to spend time with fellow board members and representatives from all over the state. It was also great to see our student board member participating. There was a day-long activity for student board members, and he's gotten networked with a whole bunch of people, and it was really great to see that. Also, Sandra Trujillo and Sitlali attended the executive assistance sessions, and I think that those are also very valuable. It was a pleasure to be part of that. During the time, we had some opportunities, some very important strategic conversations at luncheons with Schools for Sound Finance, and a meeting with a couple of lobbyists from the state level that have interest and support for a district like ours. So it was well worth the time, and I want to thank the district for supporting that continuing development for our board members. No other comments. That will bring us to item G1, the report on the 2025 California Dashboard and College Career Readiness Annual Report.
Good evening, and congratulations, President Banning and Vice President Munoz and Secretary Beal. Tonight we come bringing to you the California Dashboard information, as well as focusing on college career readiness. This slide in particular reminds us that we have 3 sets of data that we look at in order to make decisions, and tonight will be specifically about our student outcomes data, which was released in November from the state. And that data, the dashboard data, is the accountability data that every school district uses. This graphic reminds us that we're doing MTSS in our school district. As you know, it's about the right support at the right time for the right student. MTSS is about systems that serve students, not about students fitting into systems. And I just wanted to remind us that we've gone through 3 years of rolling out MTSS. In 21-22 school year, we brought in SWIFT to start the process of going into our schools, going throughout the district, and rolling out MTSS, multi-tiered system of support. We finished that 3-year rollout in 23-24 school year. So this data that you will be seeing is actually our 24-25 data, which is after the rollout. And so it's really about our high leverage action, as well as really our intentional actions that shows the results that you're seeing right now. So this evening we're bringing up are two colleagues of ours, which is specifically going to be Executive Director Fernandez, who will talk about the chronic absenteeism as well as suspension data. And then we have Assistant Superintendent Wilson, who will be talking about our academic performance, really focusing again on the college career performance. So I'd like to bring up Ms. Fernandez.
And our principal is here too.
Oh, yes.
Hi. So I'm going to introduce 2 points that the state measures for climate culture, but I want to remind you that at Santa Barbara we have so much more data than the state gives us. So in front of you, you're going to have the chronic absenteeism. On your left, you're going to see a little bit of an increase, 1.1%. And then on your right, you're going to see the subgroups that are measured and where they fall. This is a graphic that kind of shows an overall decrease in chronic absenteeism. If you look at the red line for our EMLs, you're going to see an increase currently with the environment in our society. That might be where the majority of our 1.1% might be at. Okay, so I just want to point that out for you all. This is a longer trend line. We are 17.9% and the average of the state is 17.1, so we're just above that. Our goal is to hit 14.5% by the third year, which would be 2026. And then we're going to look at, sorry, it gets cut off, but suspension rates. And again, it's a decrease. It looks like we had a little bit of an increase school year 2023-2024, but you see the drop in it in just the overall, and it is exactly 0.6% that it drops. If we look at the trend, again, it's going down. And we are below the state average, which is 2.9%, and our goal is to hit 2.0% by the third year, which is 2026. Since we decreased 0.6%, so that seems like a very doable goal because we've already made that 0.6 change. Okay. So the last thing that I want to review is how do we address all this? And really, we can do a whole presentation of all the things that we do to intervene and support our families, because again, this is just a small part of the overall experience that our students have in our schools. We have programs that are preventative, we have programs that are interventions, and then if you look at the bottom, it's our seal of culture of care. Everything we do so that our kids enjoy their experience and they're truly engaged, and all staff members are involved in it. Then we have the graphic of the tiered level that Ed Services uses for interventions academically, but we have the same idea when it comes to that social, emotional, and mental health. We have a lot of the services that are in our schools so that when they see the first red flags, they can intervene right away, and only small groups move up to a higher level of intervention. Okay. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Our California dashboard also includes important academic indicators. So you see here 4 indicators for English language arts, mathematics, English learner progress, as well as the college and career indicator. Please note the increases that you see listed for English language arts, math, as well as the college and career indicator, with our largest increase of 8.8 points for mathematics. And also our English language arts and college and career indicator are both in the level green right now. Here we can see specifically our district ELA indicator over the course of 5 years, but I'll highlight in 2022 we were at 16.1 points below standard, and over the next 4 years we are now 2.5 points below standard. So we're actually getting close to our target of 1.0 being above standard in 2026. Similarly in math, I know I highlighted some of this in our mathematics outcomes presentation last month, but you can see the growth over time as well happening. In 2022, we were actually 50.4 points below standard, and we've made some steady progress. With 2025, now we're at 27.2 points below. For English learner progress on the dashboard, although our LPAC is divided into 4 language levels, on this indicator we actually have 6. So you can see the 6. They're basically some halfway levels in between, levels 1 through 4. So you see that on the chart to the right. I'd like to note that for the 2025 indicator, it's actually a comparison of last year to this year. And so we did go down in terms of the number of students that showed growth on this indicator. And we went up a little in the number of students who maintained their current level and went down a little bit, 13.4% from 16.3%. For students who may have decreased a level. So that's good. We have fewer students decreasing, more maintaining, and maintaining is actually not a bad thing. It's actually a normal thing for language development. Students can maintain at a language level that they're currently at, as it's not always 1 year at a time. Now we have the high school graduation rate. You can see we increased by 2.3%. And no student groups are currently in red or orange. Over the course of 3 years, since 2022-23 and now to 24-25, we are also continuing to increase. We're now at 94.7%, and our target was 93.5, so we've exceeded our LCAP target already. Here we have the data disaggregated by student groups, and you see mostly increases for all but one student group, which is our students of Asian descent, who showed a decrease between the last 2 years. A related metric that we track is our UC CSU A through G completion rate. So this is students who are meeting the criteria for admissions to our UC and CSUs. And over a 3-year period, we can see an increase of percent of students who are meeting that eligibility requirement. And this past year, you can see we're at 64.1% of our students. And here we have the same data by student groups. The majority of our student groups, again, are showing some small increases in the percent of students meeting A through G requirements. When we compare our high school graduation rate and UC-CSU completion rate with both the state and the county, you can see that we are above both the state and county in both areas, both metrics. The final indicator on our dashboard is the college and career indicator, and this indicator can be a little confusing at times because there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different measures for how to actually get there. So on the left-hand side, the measures for college and career readiness are listed. So you see that UC CSU A through G requirement is one of those, as well as the Sparner Balance Assessment and a number of others. On the right, you see the measures of career readiness, and there's a number that are listed there, CTE pathway completion, as well as work-based learning. And the combination of how students can meet and be prepared for college and career, because it's either approaching or you are prepared. There's a number of different pathways that students can do. Some are a combination of college and career, and some are just all college, or some are related to language as well. So here's a multi-year comparison of our college and career indicator, and we have shown steady increases for these 3 years, and we're now at 63%. Now we see similar data now disaggregated by student group over the past 3 years. We do see here as well, majority of our student groups are showing small increases, but we do have some small decreases with our students of Asian descent, as well as our students with disabilities. This matrix is actually a report in the dashboard. There are a number of reports there. And it does show each of our high schools on the college and career indicator grid. And it shows you on the left-hand side is the performance level, and on the upper side, you see whether they declined or maintained or increased. So you can see our 3 comprehensive high schools, Dos Pueblos, San Marcos, Santa Barbara, They're either maintained or increased, and they're also in the green or blue level. And then we have Alta Vista and La Cuesta in orange. So there are a number of actions that really support the work of meeting the college and career indicator. And something I'd really like to highlight this evening has been our work in the dual enrollment space, as well as the CTE access. We know that when students are enrolled in either a dual enrollment course or a CTE course, we know that when they can have those courses that are engaging and they also have them in the comfort of our own high school classrooms, we know that they're likely to go on to college and transition more smoothly there. So this evening you'll also notice there will be an agenda item, and it's on our College and Career Access Pathways. It's our CCAP agreement. We did have a public comment just around that agreement, and you'll see that as an approval item or an item to approve, and that does support all of this work in the College and Career Indicator. In addition, our college counselors or our counselors and our PEAK program, as well as our AVID program, these all also support the work around college and career readiness. And specifically, I want to highlight that our counselors are currently doing a small test of change around this indicator and looking to help us a specific student group. And we're also working on creating new tracking tools so that we can monitor the progress of this indicator in more real time. And now I'd like to invite Principal Bill Woodard from Dos Pueblos High School, and he'll be spotlighting his successes in college and career readiness.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. As Dr. Wilson said, this metric is probably our most important metric we look at the high school level. It encompasses all of our student experiences, standardized test scores, A through G, completion, seal of biliteracy, college dual enrollment courses, etc. So it is a metric that really does tell us how well our students are prepared for life after high school. I'm very proud of the work that we have done in this area. We've been focusing like a laser beam on improving college and career readiness, and I'm proud to say that all of our subgroups made progress last year, and we hit our all-time high of 73.3%. And that was something we're all celebrating at our school, and we're going to keep going because we want to get to 80%. We did hit almost 80% in our A through G overall, which is a key component of college and career readiness. And I want to highlight that our Hispanic Latino students hit almost 70%, which has increased 39% since 2019, and is one of the highest in the state for that group. So we're very excited about that, and we are very proud of the work that we've done. A lot of that credit of this work goes to making this a very targeted, explicit goal for our school, and then also our counselors, who are a model ASCA program now, made college and career readiness one of their key components of their work, and they set target goals as well. And they created that in the middle you can see that that checklist, if you will, of all the different ways you can become college and career ready. They created that, and that has been adopted at all of our high schools now. And this is used explicitly in our counseling sessions with students. How are you going to meet your college and career readiness? And they talk about that, and they make goals, and if they fall off track or if they decide to go in a different path, they're able to use this. This is also used in our IEP meetings now, and we saw some really good growth from our students with disabilities because it is a key component of every IEP now. They talk about college and career readiness as well. And then other thing I like to highlight is, yes, standardized test scores are a key component. SBAC is super important, A through G completion. But for those students who may not be strong test takers, or may have struggled, or may have an IEP, or may be an English learner still and still struggling with getting all of those components or testing on the SBAC on that one day in May, their junior year, which is really what happens in high school, the CTE pathways are such a wonderful thing to have part of this indicator. If you can take 2 semesters of a college class during high school and get a C or better, by definition, you are college ready because you're taking a college class already before you even graduate. And so the more students that we can have complete CTE pathways, the more students that we can have take AP and IB courses. we're not cooking the books. Our AP and IB scores were the tops last year too. So when people say you're just dumbing things down, I have all the data to show that is not happening. You can come out and look at it anytime you want. Anyway, so we're very proud of that, but I really want to highlight our counselors. When you make a targeted goal, when you stay focused on it, and you really do the steps needed along the way to achieve that goal, you can accomplish it. So very proud of the work they're doing, and they will keep doing. So thank you.
I'd like to conclude by saying we're proud of our school sites. We're proud of what our teachers are doing, our counselors are doing, our site leaders are doing, as well as our programs. And just impressed with the results that are being shown from that work, and want to continue that work together. So thank you, and I'd like to open it for questions or comments.
So thank you very much. I'd like to let our board members know that I intend to continue to do the separation of comments and questions and comments. I'd like to add a nuance to that, and I would like to do a round robin type of thing where we'll start with one and move through the group for one question, then back around to the second, and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to start just to my right. Trustee Munoz, do you have comments? Questions, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no
I'll get it right before the 43rd meeting.
You're on it. No questions at this time.
Trustee Beal, questions?
I have a question, and this may be a little difficult to answer, but it looks like there's so many good things that are happening, and I really am so pleased to hear about this college and career readiness and all the things that feed into it and how we can support that at all of our high schools. That would be great. Just sort of interesting in looking at these graphs that when we look at the literacy and math and even absenteeism, there is a change, a really significant change. We have a gap 2019, 2022. I think we've always looked more at recent years, and so now I'm like seeing several years, 2019 to 2025. Did we have a demographic change? Any sort of thoughts on what happened that if things really changed in terms of just standard, like if I'm looking at these graphs, I could just very specifically say that absenteeism really significantly increased. We have this gap of information, right, COVID, 2019 to 2022, and then now we're kind of getting back there, and our goal is for chronic absenteeism to decrease to 14.5%, but we were 9.6% in 2019, so anyway, that's kind of interesting to me. And then looking at I just wonder, did we have a change in our student body that might have made this huge change? And I see Kenya is ready to answer my question. Please do.
Statewide, there was a shift and a change. Part of it was the way we did school. So it wasn't the student body. It was the transition back from COVID. It was the opportunity to do more independent study. It was those who didn't transition back. It was all the work to try and get families and students to re-engage back in doing school the traditional way. And that was a huge struggle just in the post-COVID years. And many students didn't come back to traditional brick and mortar school. They sought other options.
So we think we're starting to work in some ways with a different group of students, right? That I don't know, because
it's the post-pandemic students for sure. And it's also about having more options for the students, because some kids really thrived in online school and others really struggled. So those who found that to be the better model for them stayed there or lost opportunities because we shifted again back to brick and mortar and we reduced the online options. So we're still playing the balancing act between how are we meeting the needs of the diverse learners who had success in online school, and then how do we bring back those who that wasn't successful, but transitioning back was also still a struggle.
Trustee Caffrey, questions?
First, I just want to say there's so much to celebrate, and I'm really impressed by the number of LCAP goals that we are hitting, and just the big increase in math, how we're doing with our A to G rates. I think we have so much positive things to celebrate, and this represents a huge amount of work. My question is basically, once we hit a goal, do we adjust it? And because, I mean, I know that's like an endless treadmill, but it's great to be hitting our goals. I'm just curious what happens when we've already hit a goal. And then with EML students, I see we are not, I'm not sure, are we on track to hit our goal? And if we are not, how do we adjust what we're going to do?
Well, I can speak on behalf of the LCAP and the goal. So no matter what, because of in the LCAP, it's locked into place for the 3 years. So once we've passed it, let's just keep going. So we don't have to really worry about readjusting and moving it higher. We could do that internally here, but on the LCAP itself. And remember, we have it'll be like one more year. We're in year 2 right now, and third year is going to be next year. So, so there's that. Regarding EMLs, I'm going to pass this to Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. So for our EMLs, we do have the implementation. This is our first year of implementing the EML master plan. And part of that work, and the biggest part of supporting the language development for our multilingual learners, is to provide them with designated ELD and integrated ELD. And a big portion of our professional learning efforts this year have been in the space of integrated ELD. And we are working both at the elementary level and the secondary levels to provide that training, and also to provide the support for leaders. We were actually working with a leader yesterday in a data chat and just talking about what does it look like to now monitor instruction for a teacher who's teaching in integrated ELD strategies, as well as how to support a PLC that's working to implement those strategies into their instruction. So we are engaged in that work and deepening our practice around supporting emergent multilingual learners. Mm-hmm.
A little bit more nuance. Because most of our EMLs are enrolled in a structured English immersion program, IELD really matters, because that's most of their day is with other teachers who are not delivering instruction in their primary language. So that's why we've had a big lift in trying to basically provide professional development for every teacher to know the strategies in integrated English language development. And that's why that matters in terms of how we would intervene in the way that kids are maintaining and progressing in language acquisition.
Trustee Escobedo.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. There is a lot to celebrate. And I think we're running on a couple of meetings in a row. We got a good streak going of celebrating our successes, but also acknowledging where we can do better. So my question is actually for Mr. Woodard. And you pointed, this is tremendous, looking at the A through G completion rate. It's something that we've been talking about for many years now, particularly for the Hispanic Latino students. And I remember when you first brought these documents to us that the counselors were using, and we did kind of it's the idea of the small test of change, I think even before we were using the language of expanding it to our other high schools. Aside from, or maybe in addition to, highlighting the successes of our counselors, what else would you attribute this big leap for our Hispanic and Latino students, or just in general the A through G completion rate?
For those students specifically, we had a pretty I'm gonna call it a come to Jesus conversation at my school right after COVID, about what we wanted to be as a school and who we needed to serve better. And I showed the data that said our white and Asian students are performing as high as any in the state. I'll put them up against anybody, and then see the gap. And it ticked off our teachers, because they had to be self-reflective about what we could do together. I would say the couple things. Our AVID program is thriving at our school and all the high schools, and that program has a lot of ripple effects on instruction across the campus, because those AVID strategies that the students learn in the AVID course carry over. Our AVID teachers give presentations to our staff about how to integrate AVID strategies. We've done that. We also, our Peak After School Tutoring Center, it takes a lot of the issues away from getting extra help when you need it. So we have our seminar embedded support. All 3 high schools have that now. But I walk into our library on a daily basis after school, and our AVID our peak center is full, and it's mostly primarily our lower income students that are taking advantage of that program, and so that's another resource and support for them. And then just back to our counselors, really pressing that you got to get a C or above. D, there used to be a sigma, D for diploma, right? No, D is, I wish we didn't have a D. It would be F or C in my mind. So if you fail, you take the class again to get the C. So we put a student who gets a D or F into summer school, or into, if we have room in the classes, in the spring, on the 4x4, we can put them in that class the next semester. So there's not an option of just, oh, you got a D, it's okay. Okay, well, we're going to take that Math 2 class again. You got a D. We're going to have you in summer school because we need to get you ready for Math 3. So you need to replace that D and be back on track for A through G. Things like that we do. And then instructionally, we focus on the 4 C's at my school: critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. And we've done a lot of professional learning. Our teachers are leading each other in how to create rubrics around what does it mean to think critically, not just in our AP and IB classes. But if I walk into a college prep world history sophomore class, I want to see students engaging in DBQ, document-based questions, like you would in an AP world history class. And so that's a work in progress. We have a lot of room to grow, so I'm proud of the success we're doing. But we got to keep doing that, and that's really where our hardest work is going to be, is elevating our college prep course and the rigor and the expectations for those students. Something that the WASC Visiting Committee did recommend to us. They looked at that as an area of growth for our school, and we're like, okay, yeah, that's great. We're going to embrace that. And so we're going to be doing a lot of work on our college prep rigor in the next few years, really ramping that up. So those are some things.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think my next question would be for Dr. Maldonado, or maybe someone from the cabinet. But this idea of taking these successes and expanding them is very much in line with the RBL type of approach that you've used for cabinet members, site leadership. Now I think we're expanding into deans and assistant principals. Are counselors included in that? And if not, are we finding any spaces where we can create a similar environment, even if it's not the full RBL? And I see Miss Edison, and I always get excited when she steps up to the podium. I do. I didn't shout you out in my correspondence, but you at CSBA, I think, spoke to a lot of like this type of work and what alignment can do, and when we stay focused on really serving the students that really need more supports or different supports. Sometimes it's not even more, it's different. And changing adult behavior. So this is a lot about changing adult behavior. How are we going to do that in the counselor space, taking the successes that we're seeing at DP and expanding them district-wide?
Thank you for that question. I have the privilege of supporting counselor development, and we are taking a lot of the same strategies and the same learning from how elementary knocked it out the park, what you hear, what's happening over at DP under the leadership of Principal Woodard, to all job alikes. So yes, counselors are getting, we have a small test of change going with them right now. And as you just heard from Dr. Wilson around college and career indicator, but we also are talking about the culture of wellness and how do we bring some of those things we contract out internally so that it is just a baseline tier 1 provision and it isn't attached to an outside organization. We have great and amazing ideas. How do we then embed that in how we do business? But it really is looking and having conversations about our most burdened population. It's using our panorama data. This was the first year we have actual questions about students accessing counselors, getting guidance from counselors around being college and career ready, receiving support for them for their high school plan. So we have a starting point now so that we have a metric we can attach to the services. It's not enough to like what we do. We want to measure that it has impact, and not in a way that is good or bad, but is just progress. And so we're excited to have a data point metric where kids are sharing their own experiences with their interactions with counselors so that we have a starting place to come from. So we're doing the same work we've done with leaders. They don't have the getting away for 2 days, but we have shared language. We are still talking about small tests of change. We're talking about targeting universalism, like how do we pick a strategy for our most burdened population and give all kids access to it, because that's the population we're trying to move. We are talking about person role system. How do we make sure that we're not bringing our own biases or mess into our role that really impacts our services to students and families? We're doing all the same language, just not the entrenched learning that happened.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Carlos, do you have questions?
I do have one question, yeah. Thank you for the presentation, first of all. I had, my one question was about whether or not, the same idea of expanding the successes at Dos Pueblos, and whether or not there's kind of a process or a dialogue between, our high schools and sharing the strategies and improving college and career readiness, because, although it's incredible to have a school like Dos Pueblos as an option for our students, I'm kind of thinking of the students who, are in other areas who don't have that same, experience transportation barriers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I should highlight that all 3 high schools made really good gains last year. So I just shared my experience, but if Mr. Holder was here or Mr. Gomez here, they would be sharing similar successes in certain ways. I also think having a college career center as a focal point on the campuses and having college career counselors has created a lot of, we have had the center forever, but now when our students walk by and see there's a counselor in there that they can talk to about college going, and it's more tangible for them, I think. And so I think that is also, it's in the counseling world. But I would be remiss to say that it's just DP. I think, and myself, Mr. Holden, and Mr. Gomez work really close together. Our counseling teams at all 3 schools are tight. Many have worked at different sites together. So I think there's a lot of cross-pollination of good ideas. We take good ideas from them as well as they take ideas from us. So I just highlighted our experience.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back around on questions. Rose, you didn't have one the first time. Do you have a question now? No. Celeste, another?
I have just one more question, and that's basically, do we know what happens to our students after they graduate from our high schools, and do we track them in any way, especially since 50% of our kids go to SBCC? Do we know college completion, career? Is that data that we, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Julissa, coordinator for college and career readiness here at Santa Barbara Unified. We do have we have National Student Clearinghouse data that we're working through that project right now to see how we can really track our students. We do know in our CT space, we are tasked with our grants to follow up with students and see where they are. Sometimes it is difficult to get a hold of them afterwards because we have sometimes limited contact information. So we're working through that. So we're hopeful that we'll have that data available for our next conversation around this to really track where our students are going and then possibly even connect them, right? So if we know we have a cohort at, say, for example, UCSB, Cal State Berkeley, or, UC Berkeley or UC Merced, really anchoring that so that those students can then work with our local students and talk to them about their experience around maybe a major they're in or what their experience is like. So those are the 2 areas that really help us track that. So we're still working through some of that data right now.
Thank you. That's very exciting.
Gabe, you had 2. Carlos, any others? Okay, let's go to comments. Rose?
Okay, thank you so much for your report. It's excellent and very thorough. I'd like to comment about the peak tutoring that's offered after school. I think it's great in terms of support in a social emotionally learning environment where I'm sure that the students get help with their classes. However, they also get, peer contact and support in terms of their diverse backgrounds. Also that they also don't miss class time. So it's not like they're being pulled out, or having a study hall kind of environment, but that they're receiving that and then the results that are being demonstrated, as Mr. Woodard so well, described, and I'm sure, are seeing at other high schools. So thank you, and great great job. I'm looking forward to hearing more in the new year. Thanks.
Comments? Trustee Beal.
Yes, again, thank you for the presentation. We'll reflect Trustee Munoz's comments, which I think I'm happy to hear about the peak tutoring, and I feel like what we're really hearing is if we can offer these sort of things to our students, they will take it. And so just really thinking about that, not just at the high school level, but at other levels too.
Trustee Caffrey. Mr. Escobedo. Carlos?
I just wanted to quickly emphasize what Principal Woodard expressed about having, that tangible college and career center and how much, that support is felt by our students. I think, personally, and, for many of my peers, having, whether it's presentations from, universities from across the country or support with work experience, getting files done and stuff like that, that's just been so incredible to have. So I just wanted to emphasize that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just from me, a couple of brief comments. Kudos on the great results, and I on page 10 of the presentation, I didn't hear it called out particularly, but we're looking at all of those dashboard things, and there's not a single one that has a student group in red. That's amazing. Now, that's the bottom of the level, but I don't know how many districts are doing that. I don't know, but it's a great accomplishment, and I wanted to say thanks for that. Also, just a note that I really appreciate the work of the PEAK program. Back when I was in my first administrative role in San Diego County, I was in a district, elementary district that fed into a high school district where both of them were deeply involved with the AVID program. Back in the day where the founder, I can't remember her name, she was at Claremont High School. I actually got to meet the woman that started the AVID program in San Diego. And I just want to say, keep it up with AVID. I think it's an incredible thing that's lasted that long and continues to offer great opportunities to students who are underserved in first generation college attendance. So that's it for my comments. That brings us to the action agenda. This is the approval of the positive certification of a first interim financial report. Dr. Maldonado, did you want to do an introduction?
Yes. As Mr. Tedeschi is making his way up here today, I want to remind the board of the fiscal journey we have been on over the past 4 years. Some of you haven't been with us for years, some of you have. During negotiations both in 22-23 and 23-24, our employees and both labor partners made the case for why employees needed a raise and an increase in health benefits. At the same time, we were also conducting our review and heading into successor contract negotiations. What we found was that our salaries lagged behind the soaring cost of living. Knowing something drastic needed to be done to help our employees, we agreed to the 15% raise for employees and to increase the amount of benefits the district covers and a permanent inclusion of class size reduction in the contract. That agreement took a lot of analysis to check, double check, and triple check our projections and numbers. Our analysis found that we could afford to do this increase, but cuts would need to be made. The board at the time felt the cuts would be difficult and ongoing, but the right thing to do for our teachers and staff. So the board approved this plan, knowing that yes, we would have a structural deficit that we would be on a journey to turn around. When this was approved, the county told us that we needed to reduce our budget by $10 million last year and $4 million this year. Thanks to the hard work of our staff, we were able to meet that number and more. At this time last year, we were projecting a 5.13% reserve for this year. Instead, we are now sitting at 8.45%. Next year, we were forecasted to have a reserve just above 3%. That number is now at 5.41%. We are turning this around as planned. We are not waiting for problems and hoping for higher property taxes. We are taking action now, while also doing what's best for our students and staff. This journey is not over. There will be more difficult discussions to come, and we will get through this together. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Tedeschi to share our first interim budget report.
Thank you. Good evening, President Banning, Vice President Munoz, Dr. Maldonado. This evening I'm here to present my first real budget report as your CBO. I'm excited to have really dived into the data, dive into all the different aspects of our budget, and really get a feel for where we are and where we need to go. Like Dr. Maldonado had mentioned, some work has been done, but the work is not done. There's more work to do. The purpose of the first interim report that we have, and I'll get to it, but there's a cycle. We adopt our budget, and the first interim report is really our first major amendment to the original budget that we adopted. It also includes actual transaction data as of October 31st and projections for the rest of the year. And if you'll notice in the book, about 85, 90 pages of the book are the required state forms. The state account code structure requires that CDE has in their own application that we use to import all the data from our system into that system. And so this may be a familiar slide for you. This is the annual budget financial cycle for us. In July, we started the new fiscal year. In September, if you remember, I brought the unaudited actuals report that closed the books for last year and set a revised beginning fund balance for us. Here we are in December with our first interim report. Then in January, we get the governor's proposal for next year. As we start, we've already started looking at the budget for next year and budget development conversation. And then we get through February and March, we really start working on that, the technical data pieces of the adopted budget. We continue through April and May, and then finally in June, we adopt the budget for the following year. And the key component to know about this is a lot of the work and a lot of the data that we bring is in March and April and into May. And we finish our budget that I bring to the board before the state has finished their budget, before they've adopted their budget. And so oftentimes we will not include things in our budget what the governor may have proposed, but the legislature hasn't approved because we don't know, especially if it's a big revenue item. If it's something that there might be costs, we would consider including that as a safety precaution. So usually when I start, I like to look at enrollment. Enrollment is a key component for the financial aspect of any school district. And I think for us, it's always good to look at trends. I went back to 22-23, 23-24, through 25-26. And all of this data came out of the CDE website. I try to find data, I try to utilize as much certified data from public sources, so there's no changing of data that's been published. And so what you'll see here, and as part of the budget process, we have to remember over the last 4 years, we've added a whole nother grade level called transitional kindergarten. And that has added at least an additional 14 or 15 classrooms to our elementary schools. Now what you see here in the state's data in 22-23, they were still combining TK with kindergarten. So that 541 number is really, the TK number is really 141, and the kindergarten was 400. So, but what you see is the decline over those years in all grade levels. Elementary's down 118 students, and then we look at junior high and high. Junior high's down 178, high school's down 289, and over that time we've declined by 585 students. And that's with the addition of transitional kindergarten. And I wanted to add this as an explanation as to how the school districts are funded. We have LCFF districts and we have community funded or basic aid districts. And this is a key component in how we receive our revenues. On the left side, you'll see that's an LCFF district. That means their property taxes don't exceed the state funding level, which is that yellow line. So that yellow line is called the entitlement, and that's through this big LCFF calculation that we do with average daily attendance. You'll see down below where the Santa Barbara numbers are. It adds up the base grant, supplemental grant, concentration grant, and the add-on programs, and the state says you need to be funded at a minimum of $157,672,102. So that's the line that the state has set for us. We are fortunate enough to be community funded, though not by much. You'll see on the right side, the green box is local property taxes, and it hits the yellow line, that entitlement, but then the pink box above that is what we're called the excess property tax number. So this is the amount, the dollars you see is a little over $12 million. At the adopted budget, that number was only a little over $3 million. And the things that will change that are a decline in enrollment, an increase in the base grants, the entitlement. If that yellow line moves, that changes how deep we are into basic aid. And for a district our size, 12 million is not very deep into basic aid. So a significant increase in ADA, a big COLA from the state could push us out of being community funded. But what continues to help us, and I'll get into it in our slide, is the growth in property taxes. And so what we see here is the last few years, the last 2 years and the current year, are the growth in property taxes. Our property tax revenue in 23-24 was almost 168 million, and that year it grew by a lot, 6.29%. I think one of the big things that happened that year was, I believe, the Bacara sold for $500 million. And I think that was on the tax roll for maybe 300 or 250 million. So that was a big boost. You can also have the negative of that. If you remember the All Plains pipeline, when that spill happened and then they shut it down, then they shut down the Elwood processing plant, that took millions of dollars of tax revenue from local communities. So the next year we grew by about 4.7%, and then we usually project around 4% from one year to the next. The wild card in this is what's called the redevelopment agencies, and those, there's a whole big explanation for that, but beyond the secured property tax and unsecured property tax, that grows a little bit more than the standard 4% from one year to the next. So we projected 4%, and with the RDA ended up being 4.36. And going into this year, we projected 4%, and our initial report that we received from the county has us a little over 5%, which is good. And so that pushes us a little further. That kind of got us to the 12 million from the 3 million into being basic aid. And so getting into the operations of the first interim budget here, and I do want to say the presentation is meant to be very balcony level look into our budget. And every time we do an interim budget, I produce a document that looks like this. That'll be available on our website. That really gets into the details, explanations, assumptions, all of the things that go into the budget. And so I really kind of scrunched it together to give you the numbers that are most important for us to be looking at. Total revenues and sources. And so when I say combined general fund, that means putting together the unrestricted piece and the restricted piece. It puts those together. Restricted funds are like federal dollars, state dollars, grant money that's for specific purposes. The unrestricted is the property tax money that's at the discretion of the board to allocate as we need to. And so total revenues have gone up to 244 million at first interim. That's up from our adopted budget. And then you see expenditures also went up from our adopted budget to increase the deficit from 15 million to 20 million. And I'll get into some of the explanations for that here soon. Let's see, 8.7. So the increase in revenue is due to some increased one-time grants that we received. Some, let's see, we are our expanded learning opportunity program. And this is a good example of something that after we adopted our budget, before the state adopted their budget, they changed the formula. So that grant increased significantly for us, and that's for the after-school program. So we were expecting 3 million, and we got 5.2 million. Didn't find that out until late June, early July, and even when they said they were doing it, it took them another month to finalize the formula for us to really understand what that number was. There's also a new block grant, California Community Schools Partnership Program. There's a student support and professional development discretionary block grant. And these are things that we don't include in the budget when we do it in March and April because they say they might do it, but it hasn't been approved yet. So for us to put $6 million into the budget without being sure it's coming is a dangerous way to budget. I'm not real comfortable with. You'll see the increase in the deficit was by 5.2 million. And a lot of that is, or almost all of it, is spending down of those restricted balances. So when we closed the books, we had $23 million of unspent restricted balances on the books. And so one of my goals as we do work through this year and into next year is really work on spending those dollars down. But what that does, you receive the money in a prior year, you spend it in this year, it ends up as a deficit. It's like if you get money into your personal bank account, you put it in your savings account, you record it as income in this year, the year's over, you go into the next year. When you spend it, it's a deficit because there's no revenue to compare it to. So that's the main reason that our deficit went up by that much. And if you look at the bottom there, in 23-24, which was before the negotiated settlement, our reserve was 18.68%. 24-25 went down to 13.68, and then for our adopted budget, 8.92. And then you'll see it is now at first interim 8.52. And a breakdown of our revenues here, the big blue piece of the pie is our LCFF revenue, and that's mostly property tax. There's a small piece that we still get from the state for under the LCFF calculation. And the green slice is our state revenue, and I'm happy that the federal slice, the red one, is the smallest one, because that's the one that seems to be the most at risk. We went through one scare earlier in the year where they froze it. We didn't know if we were going to get it. We were scrambling to figure out what we would do if that didn't come. So, and we get to our expenditures. You'll see the biggest piece of the pie, to no one's surprise, 81% of our expenditure budget goes to salaries and benefits. And then we have the green slice is for services, professional services. And what we're finding now is when we can't fill critical positions, we have to go out and find contractors to do some of that work, especially in the area of special education, speech pathologists, paraeducators, and they tend to be more expensive than if we hired them as employees. And so I'd like to see the green slice get a little smaller and the blue slice get a little bigger. So 81% is salaries and benefits, 11% are the professional services, and you'll see the books and supplies is 4%. And then here's where we get into the multi-year projection. For any budget, any report that we do, we are required to do our projections for this year and also for 2 subsequent years. And so when you look at this year, you'll see 25-26, where we are with a deficit of 20 million it planned, and then 26-27, it's reduced to 13, and then 27-28, 6.7. As a part of that, what's necessary is we still need to make reductions. And these are minimum reductions that I'm proposing to maintain a reserve level of a minimum of 5%. That's not a satisfactory level of a reserve for a basic aid district, but I think when some of the previous calculations, the AB 1200, when we did the increase, had us just above 3%. 3% is that magical line where then the county and the state gets involved, your budget can't get certified. And so for me, doing what we can to at least stay above 5%. That's a minimum. And keep in mind, this does not include anything that we're in the process of negotiating right now. So any additional costs that we go through in negotiations will require us to make additional cuts. And so what I'm proposing here is $6 million over the next 2 years, and that can flip. If we do $4 million next year and $2 million the following year, that's great. I think the proposal is 6 over the 2. The way the calculation worked, it was just to keep that reserve above 5%. And so we are in the process constantly, we call it budget sustainability efforts. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we are on the right path, we keep moving in the right direction. Like I had mentioned, we planned for $6 million in reductions, but with the caveat that additional reductions will be needed to fund any new initiatives, any additional things we want to do, and for any negotiated settlements going forward. For me, the recommendation at a minimum is to set a 5% unrestricted general fund reserve. I think that just trying to keep above 3% isn't enough. We need to do better than that. We are currently going through an exercise here at the district office with all my cabinet members of inventorying and assessing kind of all of the things that we do, our initiatives, our programs, what are we spending money on? And then we'll go through a process also with our school sites to then prioritize those and put them in different priority buckets of must have, nice to have, not the highest priority, and really start to look to see where some of those areas are where we can make reductions. And we also are going to continue to analyze staffing levels. And so we did an exercise in our PLT meeting today with our whole team that included district office, our cabinet members, to really look at our departments, all of the schools, to analyze staffing based on the reduction in enrollment. How are we staffed? And the appearance would be that we may be overstaffed in certain areas for the amount of money that we have. And so that is where a lot of the money is, as 81% of our budget is in staffing. And so we are going to be looking at areas of staffing to right size, to fix with as minimal of an impact on students as possible. And then we'll continue to evaluate and implement cost reduction strategies. And that's going to happen this year and next year and ongoing forever and ever and ever. Because it's necessary for us to maintain our fiscal solvency and a positive budget certification going forward. And so I know there's a lot in this budget, and that was a real high-level presentation, so I would definitely ask you to look through the book if you haven't already, to read through the narrative and the pieces and the explanations, and I'm here to answer any questions that I'm sure you have.
So we'll start with questions, and we'll do the round robin again. Is there some that, I'm sorry, we do have a public comment? Okay.
Yes.
Apologies.
No, thank you, Mr. Banning. The first public comment is Michelle Voigt, followed by Todd Voigt.
Hi, good evening. I'm Michelle Voigt. I'm a San Marcos parent and part of School Board Bridge. I'm asking you tonight to look at this first interim not as a technical report, but a test of your governance and your duty to the community you represent. Your own first interim shows the district losing about $20.5 million this year in the general fund, with continued deficits into the next 2 years and reserves sliding down from 8.45% to just over 5% by 27-25. That's driven by restricted programs spending about $40.5 million more than their own revenues, leaving roughly a $14 million gap that has to be plugged by draining the unrestricted budget and reserves. If that pattern continues without major course correction, your own projections point to reserves falling below the state minimum and trending towards zero within a few years. And no one will be able to say that they didn't see it coming. High quality, representative, student-focused boards do 3 things. They face uncomfortable data honestly. They tie every budget decision to student outcomes, and they protect public trust through transparent process and independent, community-rooted oversight, not by concentrating power in the same hands that approve the spending that got us here in the first place. Tonight, I'm asking you to acknowledge that this is a structural problem, not a one-year hiccup. Direct the superintendent to bring back real structural plan that shows options, trade-offs, and timelines, including ones for central office and contracts and not just classrooms. Commit that any reductions will be guided by student outcomes and equity and be developed with real community voices at the table and not happen after the fact. You have been given a clear warning with this first interim. Your ethical responsibility as trustees is not to just ratify this slide deck, but to change the trajectory while there is still time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Todd Voigt.
Superintendent Maldonado, board members, hello. Good evening. My name is Todd Voigt, parent of two San Marcos High School students and the current chair of the Finance Committee. First, I want to start off and thank Conrad for his exceptional work completed in such a short time frame. I've had the chance and opportunity to work with him for the last 5 months, and he is absolutely the right person for the job, and so very, very good on us for him. I'm also very much encouraged by the proposal for $6 million in cost savings. However, given the recently released financial results that depict a shockingly worse financial position and outlook for the district, I urge the board and the management to think bigger, not only in terms of cost reductions, but also in revenue generation. District reductions must come from both sides. Deficit reduction must come from both sides of the equation, savings and revenue. With greater community trust in the board and administration, we can reignite capital revenue growth to strengthen our financial position. I'd also encourage the board to broaden its approach to cost savings across all areas of the district's expense structure, including administrative costs. Since 2020, administrative expenses have increased 49%, while revenues have only increased 32%. Administrative cost per student has surged from $800 per student when the current administration team arrived to $1,360 per student today, a 71% increase. For comparison, the average for California school districts of similar size is $800 per student. Also, just under the current management team, the district has accumulated 38 million losses in just 2 years, projected to lose another $20 million in the next 2 years. So 60 million of the reserve is gone in 4 years. We started with like 72 million 3 years ago. So if we're considering reductions in staff, we should also make sure we're considering reductions in administrative staff as well. This is a pivotal moment. The financial trajectory of the district is unsustainable. At the time for incremental change is past. I urge the board to take bold, decisive action, expand cost-saving measures to include administration, pursue new revenue opportunities, restore fiscal discipline. Our students, our teachers, and our community deserve the district that is financially stable and future-focused.
25
Let's make
seconds.
the hard choices now before they're made for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other comments? Is that it?
No, that's all.
Okay. So that'll bring us to board questions first. And what we'll do is roundtable, starting with whoever has the question first. Anyone have a question? Okay. Trustee Beal. We'll be going around from there.
Changing the system on me. Okay. Mr. Tedeschi, I completely appreciate this. I feel like I really understood what was happening here. It's hard to not make a comment. I'm sorry to just without starting with a question, but it was nice. I just want a little bit of clarification. I kind of had asked you this question sort of separately, but this spending down of restricted funds. So if I understand what you're saying correctly, from the time of our adopted budget, you know, in the summer, we are like, okay, now we have these restricted funds that we haven't spent, and we need to spend them. So that increased the expenditures. So is your proposal that we try to not end up with such a big pot of restricted money at the end of the year that then we have to spend very quickly? Is that what you're saying? Trying to spend down in a different way so that the expenses are accounted for earlier? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's one of the plans to really kind of mitigate some deficit issues, would be to try to spend those restricted balances down. But I want to clarify, it was in the budget last year to spend a big chunk of those that carried over. And the timing of producing the budget for this year was such that it was in the budget last year with the intention that it was going to be spent. And so we couldn't budget for it again, otherwise it would be budgeted in 2 periods. And so we had assumed that those projects would be completed. And we can't record the expenditure until the project's completed, the equipment's in place, and that didn't happen until after the end of the year. And so I couldn't included in this year's budget, or couldn't be included in this year's budget and still be in last year's budget. And so this is kind of a truing of that up. It didn't get spent last year, so it remained in that restricted fund balance. And so that's why it shows up, and it added another $5 million to the deficit, because we had to move that all forward, and it wasn't accounted for yet this year when we adopted the budget. We were working on it in April and May.
So then our actuals at the end of last year would have had a decrease in expenses, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is always the interesting thing as you go from one year to another. It's academic year, and it's just
Right.
so hard to wrap your mind around. Okay, thank you for
And that's
answering.
why the closing of the books is so important, because that's what reconciles all that. We close it, and then whatever didn't get spent goes back into the reserve, and then we adjust for that at first interim because we didn't know it in time for the adopted budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Caffrey.
Thank you very much for this presentation. And I know you're new and you did not do the last budget, so you are coming in with a lot of things already set up. And so I appreciate your presentation. And what I would ask is basically this $14 million in higher restricted spending. One, I guess for me, that's like the most salient number in the interim report. What else should we be paying attention to? Because basically, I guess my question is, we are covering this $14 million in additional expenses through increased revenues, basically, and no?
No.
So
it's revenue that's already been received and was sitting in a reserve, in a restricted reserve amount.
So I guess I see that the deficit is going down by only $5 million, and our revenues have increased by 10. Do you see what I mean? Basically, how is it that our... Can you explain this to me,
Well, I'm
please?
not
Yes.
Which schedule are you looking at?
So
are you
I'm
on
looking.
Page 7?
I'm looking at the total expenditures, and I see that we.
What page
I'm
are you
sorry.
on?
On page 7 of restricted funds.
Okay.
And so, but then I see overall we only have our
So this
estimated. Oh, sorry.
This is unrestricted, and I think the thing to look at here is the ending fund balance of the unrestricted reserve changed by only $660,000,
But I'm looking at the restricted.
which will be the next page. I just
Yes.
wanted to point that
Oh.
out because that one was on the screen.
Okay,
Can you go
sorry.
to the next page? So this is the one you're looking at.
Yes. And so basically what I'm wondering is, so this shows that we are spending $14 million more than budgeted from our restricted fund. And that money has to come from somewhere.
It comes from the balance of funds that were already there on the restricted side of the budget.
So I guess...
And I can tell you what the big items are if that's what you're interested in.
So I guess what I'm asking is, like, if we look overall, here, can you pull up our,
The combined.
oh,
general fund?
so basically our ending fund balance, right? We have $5 million more of deficits than anticipated. So what does that come from?
That comes from the restricted reserve.
So that's what I'm asking you, is basically we're covering $5 million of the additional spending of the restricted reserves from.
Restricted reserves.
So,
Now make it- it's a-
yeah, I mean, maybe I'm confused with restricted reserves.
So think of the analogy about the bank account.
Yeah.
So the revenue came in a prior year. That's the revenue, and it's sitting in the savings account, which is the restricted reserve.
Oh.
And so then we added it back to the expenditure side to spend it out of the savings account.
I see. So
For that.
basically, when you're saying that we only have a 5% or 8% cushion and 5% next year, the majority of that
That's unrestricted.
is.
And the reason they're related
Yes.
is that percentage is calculated based on combined expenditures. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to combine them, but it takes the unrestricted reserve balance that doesn't include all these restricted things, and you divide that by the combination of the unrestricted and the restricted expenditures. So it's getting into a technical area, but
I guess
that's how you get the percent.
So the reserves include both the unrestricted and the restricted?
No.
Oh, the 5% is only unrestricted reserves?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So basically, I guess my question then is our reserve position worsening compared to when we budgeted? And
so the unrestricted reserve, like I showed you, went down by $660,000. So that is not better. It's, I guess you could call it worse, by $660,000. So that's really the key dollar amount. But if you look at the dollar amount of it, it went from let's see. So it's now $22,390,000, 8.45% for this year. So when we adopted the budget, it was going to be less than that, correct? So what happens is when, let me back up a little bit.
Yeah.
So when you increase the restricted expenditures, that increases your denominator in that calculation.
Okay.
And so where the dollar amount of the unrestricted reserve didn't change by a whole lot, because the total expenditure number changed, the percentage came down a little bit, about 0.5%. Because of the math. So the dollar amount of the total reserve, unrestricted available reserve, didn't change by a whole lot. But because we added all these restricted expenditures, it changed that calculation, so the percentage came down a little bit.
okay, so basically the big picture is that the restricted reserves, spending down the restricted reserves does not impact our overall reserves.
It doesn't impact the dollar amount of our
I mean,
unrestricted
but the
reserve.
percentage.
It will impact the percentage because it's included in total expenditures.
Okay, I'm sorry
I know
because
we're going round and round. I'm sorry, I can't. I don't
guess
know any other way
here's
to really
okay. Here, I'll ask it in a different way. We are slated to have 5% reserves next year.
Right.
Why don't we just talk about that? And is the $14 million that does not have any impact on our reserves going down, so we don't have to worry about that piece.
That's this year.
Yeah, I want to point out that
Yeah.
we're on an item for approval of the first interim budget, not next year's budget.
Yes, but I guess my question, I mean, what this really pertains to is, what I'm wondering is, in the first interim budget, you're saying we're amending the current budget.
The adopted budget.
The adopted budget for this year.
That is correct.
So basically, the only thing that has changed is that we're spending down our restricted.
There's a lot of things that have changed.
I
in
mean,
the budget.
large
Yeah.
variance, like basically, like materially. I mean, like you see 18% is a large variance. To me, that's important.
Different
So-
accounts changed by different amounts. Well, we got more revenues because property tax estimate went up. Some expenditures maybe have gone down, some have gone up. So it's a net of all of those things. But the bulk of the change is on the restricted side of the budget.
Exactly. That's what I'm asking
Yes.
you is basically, is the bulk of the change on the restricted side of the budget, and does that impact our financial picture? That is my simple question.
The one part of that does impact the unrestricted side is the contribution to special education went up by $3 million. And so that is an impact that is ongoing.
So then, if that $3 million, if we're spending $3 million more in special ed than anticipated, do we need to do anything about that? Like when we spend $3 million more, do we have to think about reducing?
I can tell you the bulk of that comes from the contracts where we tried to hire open positions, couldn't find people, must provide the services, and so we hire contracts to do that work, and that's the bulk of that. So in trying to do that, if we can hire those positions and eliminate the contract, that's the work that we will do to try to make that happen. and reduce the cost of those contracts. And there's other strategies for special education, which is a completely different conversation for another time.
I'll ask a different question later, in the next round.
All right. Trustee Escobedo.
Thank you. A couple years ago, we had a collective bargaining agreement, and I'll have a couple of points about this. But we committed to the investment in salaries and benefits and classroom size and many other investments that cost money. And we did that understanding at the time that I think by the 26-27 year, we had projected we were going to be actually below 5%. So this outlook actually depicts some of the changes that we had already made between that time and receiving the AB 1200 and now. So we're already making changes and we're right sizing, and we've done that work over the last couple of years. We continue to do that work you outlined in the first interim. My question to you is, for that AB 1200 that we got, it outlined, I think, about $12 million in cuts that we had to make, or that they said at the time. There's a lot of assumptions in that, right?
Right.
How does our position now compare to that couple of years ago, the AB 1200, the depiction of the cuts that we had to make then? What progress have we made to present? What type of reduction in spending or changes are we looking at in the near future?
That's a very good question. A number of cost reduction strategies were put in place. I believe it was $10 million for this year and projected $4 million for next year. I'd have to go back and look at all of those individual items to see where they ended up. But also part of that was the increase in property tax that may not have been, like we projected 4%, came in at 4.5%. It's about $1.8 million extra in revenue per percent. And so that helped reduce the amount that was needed to be cut this year. And so projecting again 4% next year is also helping that condition too. So where the projection was to cut $4 million out of next year, I'm saying for us to stay above 5%, we could do that by only cutting 2. But I think that's really a minimum, and the work we need to do is to do more. I think getting closer to 10% is a more reasonable thing for us to do. But I think a lot of work was done to where the condition isn't worsening. I think a lot of the things that were put in place and have made a difference. I mean, it looks pretty bad for this year, but this is only the second year since we committed to $40 million in negotiated settlement costs. I think that's where it about ended up if you add the class size reduction and the salaries and the benefits. That's significant for any school district to take on in 1 year. And so you'll see it's a 3-year, at least 3 years to work that out. And I think trying to spread reductions over multiple years instead of trying to do them all in 1 year, which is why that 3% is such a magic number. Like if you're going to go below 3%, you have to do them in that year. But I think we can kind of space them out. We can, but I think we should make every effort now to continue down that road to make the reductions necessary to keep us on the right path.
And those expenses, well, our expenses in general get more expensive from year to year, right? We're seeing things, whether it's supplies, services, utility costs, but also step and column is more expensive from 1 year to the next. And
even the salary increase, like this year we added 3% in July and another 2%. That's on top of the 10%. So it compounds. Yeah. So and then all the inflation and all of the other costs.
So that's also some of the things that we're taking into consideration, right? The increased cost as we're trying to build our reserve over time. We're trying to right size our ship and make sure that we're not deficit spending. We're also taking into consideration that yes, we're increasing our revenues through property tax, but we also have increased costs over time. And so it's kind of this balancing act that you're being asked to do, in addition to having restricted funds and spending those down. And at the same time, you have special education, and we have a contribution that we have to make. And know how precarious the federal spending is. So that's also another type of thing. As we're sorry to get into a comment, but that's also part of this equation of why when we look at 3 years out, there are a lot of assumptions. There are a lot of things that change. There are we're getting increased revenue, but even just the ordinary services or costs that we have, they're increasing as well. So
absolutely. And from January, from the governor's proposal till June, a lot can change in that. If the economy has shifted and revenues have come in higher, they could say, we're going to give $10 million to Santa Barbara Unified in one-time funds because it happens. And we just don't know, we can't really account for that till it happens. There's so many shifting things, but the things we can control, we need to control. Staffing levels, contracts, costs, the things that we do, we can try to control those the best we can. And that's what we're working on together as a leadership team, including our site principals, our cabinet, everybody.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Carlos, do you have questions?
I do not know.
Okay, Rose, anything? Okay, Trustee Beal. Okay, Celeste.
Would you mind just pulling up page 4? Because I think that this would clarify my question. So it looks like, I guess this is what I think would be helpful for the board, like as we're walking through the first interim, and maybe this goes into financial reporting, but like looking at the variances between what we budgeted and then what is actually happening. So
let me start by saying this is combined. This is unrestricted and restricted combined together.
Yes, but here's my question. Okay. So it looks like we got more revenue than anticipated.
Yes.
And this is what I think would be helpful also for me as a new board member. You know, I'm trying to figure this out, and I feel like a detective, you know, you're an expert, so I'd love to be walked through this. And tell me where I'm wrong, because the restricted, unrestricted reserve is tricky. Anyway, look at total revenues. We are fortunate that we got $8.6 million more than we anticipated.
Correct.
Okay. Then we look at our expenditures. And I guess here I see some high variances. So like 46.5% books and supplies, 22.5% services and other operating expenses, 210% capital outlay. And I understand we can't predict the future perfectly, but I guess when you have, like, at what level of variance do you think it's worth explaining to the board the underlying reasons behind
They are explained in the book, maybe not to the so if I need to, again, this is my first book for you all, and every board's a little different, and I'm happy to adapt this to what this board wants. But I can tell you those variances are because of the things that I had talked about. So for instance, the Prop 28 waiver funds was about $2 million, and a lot of that is in that capital outlay because we're redoing theater equipment, we're remodeling, we're doing curtain, like there's a lot of things in the theaters that we're doing with that. So that wasn't in the adopted budget, so that created that variance. That's the Arts, Music, Instructional Materials Block Grant. Same situation. Budgeted last year, didn't spend it, didn't budget it in the adopted budget, so it shows up here. And so that created the variance. And so it's not that our projections were bad, it was that the timing of when those expenditures happened, that communication could have been a little better at the end of the year to know that those things weren't going to happen.
So I guess my question here is basically we see that we have $5 million more than anticipated in expenses. Is that right? 5.2.
Correct. Okay.
So my question is, do we make any changes in our budget going forward because of this additional $5 million in spending? And we're so fortunate that we had $8.6 million in extra revenues, but what if we hadn't had it? And with reserves so thin, would we be in 3%? You know?
We would be having a little different conversation and the report would look different. But I'm telling you that 5.2, the majority of that is out of restricted reserves. Because if you look at see how restricted went from 20.8 million to 16.1. That's where that 4.7 million is a reduction in restricted reserves that's used to pay for most of that 5.3 million.
So I guess I just go back to the reserve level at being at 5%.
Right.
Like, what if we hadn't gotten $8 million extra? And where would we be today? Like, should the board have a more aggressive, be making cuts more aggressively than just $6 million in 2 years?
I think a lot of that expenditure piece would look very similar because it was using existing balances that we had. I mean, the deficit might have been bigger, but more of it would have come out of restricted dollars.
So if we hadn't had the additional $8 million, we would have been fine, I guess is my question.
I'm not saying we would have been fine. I'm just saying that the carryover of those restricted amounts would have happened anyway, right? And so a good portion of that 8.6 million is restricted. Those new grants that the state went. So honestly, I try not to go on what if scenarios because I just have too much to think about and try to account for what's actually happening. But I do understand what you're saying. What is the course of action if something like this happens? And that would be a conversation we'd be having right now. This report would look different and we would be problem solving how to fix it. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to tell you.
I guess for me, it feels like this is, are we living on the edge with reserves this low, and what is recommended for reserves, and how, to me, this seems like a case where we need to have a policy.
And I think those questions about what our reserve levels are move out of the realm of the action on the floor.
Except we're approving an updated budget.
Right, but you're talking about changes in reserve policy, which is not this budget. I just want to be careful. We have to talk about what's on the table. There will be opportunities to address these issues, and I think it's important just to keep those things clear.
Yes, I wonder, is the board approving this idea of only $6 million in cuts?
The board is approving the first interim report that is submitted to the county and the state. That's all you're being asked to do tonight. We're having a lot of discussion about the value of the information that's in here. There's a portion.
Trying to understand what, yeah.
Excuse me? What I see in this report is something that we were expecting to not have $8 million additional revenue, and that we were expecting and had actually budgeted for numbers that would have had our reserve significantly lower than the number that it came out. To me, this is a good process. We have moved from what we said that we were going to need to do over time to recoup and start building back a reserve toward, at what point, I believe at some point was a 10% desire, and it's happening faster. And we have explanations for why the unrestricted reserves, the impact that they had on those negative numbers that would not be significantly different without the $8 million. What might be different is the reserve level itself being lower, closer to where we actually budgeted for this year. So I want to finish up with any other questions, allow comments, and our task tonight is to say, are we going to approve this statutorily required budget report that has to be filed with the state by a certain time? Are we approving it or not? That's what's on this agenda item. There's a lot more that we could be talking about, but it hasn't been agendized, and we need to make sure that we're talking about things that have been publicly agendized.
I guess my question is basically, we have board policy that any change to our budget is an amendment. And so is this considered the amendment to our budget?
Yes.
So basically, we're not only submitting this to the state, we're amending our budget right now.
Well, this is what we're submitting. Yes. It is all we're submitting.
But it is also the amendment to our budget.
That's all of what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what's not clear to me is like, what I feel like is confusing is, how are we amending our budget, and what is the impact on the financial health of the district?
I I try to explain that the best I can in the narrative that I provide. So that explains the variances of salaries and benefits, the changes in the assumptions for the multi-year projection, like all of those things. And I think if the nature of bringing a budget to this board requires more detail, I can do that. And believe me, there's going to be more conversation on budget from me and this board moving forward. So this is definitely, this is where we are. This is our budget amendment. And there's going to be a second interim coming in February, I believe, or March, before we get to the final adopted budget for next year. So there will be more conversation on this. I think this budget reflects the changes from adopted to what we have in the budget now. And this is what we need to get approved and send to the county by the 15th. And so it's not the final act in the budget for the year. This is the change from back in March and April and May when we were working on this to now. And so this is the first major budget review, and this is usually the big one. The second interim usually has fewer changes and fewer swings and fewer variances. And so that's a part of me getting to know the shifts and the timing of things for this district as I'm working through. I learned a lot doing this budget. There's a lot of details and things that go in here. And so also our team working on reductions that we can make in this fiscal year so that we end the year maybe a little better. But it also doesn't account, like I said, for negotiations for next year. So when that's done, that'll be in the next multi-year projection. So this evening is this big amendment to the adopted budget that we call the first interim.
Mr. Escobedo, other questions?
Yeah, just one.
Yeah.
So one of the other, I'm drawing on my professional experience, and I imagine that this happens. You render services in one fiscal year. You don't get the invoice until the next fiscal year. So you budgeted for it in the first fiscal year, but it doesn't actually come out of your funds until the second fiscal year, which could lead to what we're seeing in the first interim. Is that correct?
Right. Well, we also, if we've known it's happened and the service has been provided, we will accrue it. Which means we will post that expenditure before the end of the year. Then we don't end up in this budget cycle. Then the expenditure ends up in the correct year. But what happened was the service wasn't provided. It was planned for, but not provided. So we couldn't accrue it because it hadn't happened yet. So that's what moved it to the next year. It's an accounting kind of timing. What period does the expense go in?
Thank you for explaining that.
Sure.
No further questions.
Okay, we'll move on to comments. Trustee Munoz?
Certainly, thank you. Mr. Tedeschi, I really appreciated the summary explanation that you gave us on the budget and, found it very understandable for a non-financial person here speaking. And when I looked at the budget, the first interim budget itself, it matched up with what you were what you explained and then what we were also expecting. So I commend you for that. And then further for the, answers to the questions that you've given us. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Trustees Beal?
I'll repeat that, yes, I really appreciated the explanation. And if I had to criticize the report, I'd say, hey, we got grants that maybe we weren't planning on, and I would love to see it highlighted. I know that I've commented in the past that it would be nice to bring more revenue into the district, and I hope in the future we can have community revenue to support our efforts in the district. But somebody applied for those grants, and we got the money, and I think that is really wonderful, and that's something to really talk about also. Listening to this conversation, which, financial conversations are always very complex. I love your savings account analogy, and I think what Trustee Caffrey is alluding to is, in my personal life, we had a roof repair, and I know that I was like, okay, this is going to be really expensive. And then my husband told me the actual cost. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot less. And then I started planning like a really fabulous vacation. But he misunderstood something, and it's now back to the cost that I thought it was, right? And so no fabulous vacation. So I think, and Trustee Caffrey can clarify this. if in the course of a year, special education, we have to spend that money. We're required by law. So yes, we will have expense, and that's been an issue, right? We know that from negotiations and trying to understand the budget. But if there were some expense that happened in the middle of a year, we've adopted a budget, and here comes this thing, and we weren't lucky enough to get a grant or funds to offset it, and we might have to do a course correction within that year. That is, I think, what she's speaking to. So how as a board do we hear that and not when we do the actuals at some point say, oh, our reserve is a lot lower than we thought it would be, and did we get a warning signal? Should we have brought something to the agenda that we have to freeze something or not spend something? So I think that is potentially what she's alluding to, and she can comment on that.
Did you want me to answer that? So,
yeah, I was kind of clarifying. Maybe we'll talk about that in the financial remedy issue. But that's, I think, what I'm trying to. I think that's a concern that I'm hearing. Yes, basically, I think that is exactly right. And for me, I just feel like we need to have. And I know this is your first budget book for you, so I'm not. This is in no way a criticism because I think that you gave a very good presentation, but basically doing a general PowerPoint, but then asking the board to read all of the footnotes and not doing a line by line explanation of what has changed and, the overall financial health of the district. It's not sufficient. And so I guess one piece I would love in the financial committee or in board policy, I mean, it's related because
you're trying to relate it?
No, because actuals and variance, right now we're looking at reporting, how things are reported to us.
Right now we're looking at approving the first interim budget.
Yes, but we have to approve the first interim budget and understand it sufficiently to approve it, which I think requires better reporting.
Understood.
So I think that's a pretty direct connection. But yeah.
Appropriate as a comment, not as an action. Mr. Escobedo.
Thank you. I'm going to disagree with my colleague. I think that the report is sufficient. I think one of your talents, Mr. Tedeschi, is breaking down a complicated budget and explaining it to a layperson like myself. School finance, this is probably trust me, I'm a policy nerd. The school finance is the most complicated topic to understand, and I'm here about to enter my 4th year, and I'm just feeling like I have my arms around it enough to be able to articulate some of my concerns or questions. I look at this and I see the outlook that we had 2 years ago before the previous investment and agreement from the negotiation session that we had. What the board approved and where we were going to land in that 3-year projection is far different than where we are now. I know we look at the reserves and we look at the 3-year projection and we look and we say 5%. I feel that because we were having this discussion a couple of years ago about, oh, geez, 3 years out, we are getting pretty close to 3%. And we made those decisions understanding we were going to have to make some structural changes. And we have begun those structural changes. We are not where we need to be. We are not where we are going to end up. The questions that my colleagues are asking are questions that I think we all have because we're trying to be responsible stewards of our funds, and I think that is commendable. What I see here, though, is that we are being responsible stewards of our funds, and these things don't happen from one year to the next. It would be a shock to the system to go from what is projected to be 5% next year in 1 year and try and get to 10% or 12% or what the recommended percentage in our reserve is, which is 17%. I know it feels like you look at this, and the explanation made a lot of sense to me about the restricted side of the budget. And when you look at it on a superficial level, it's cause for concern. After the explanation, it actually makes a whole lot of sense. And I mentioned all of the ways in which our costs are increasing, and even with increased revenue, you look at the increased revenue and you think, wow, why is our reserve not going up at the same rate at which we're collecting revenue? It's because our costs are going up, and some of those costs are very unpredictable. So I do have an interest in increasing our reserve beyond the 5%, but I actually think that that's what Mr. Tedeschi is putting on the table for us, is that not only to stabilize us where we're at, he is acknowledging in this report that we need to make further reductions in spending or changing how we operate as a business or as a school district. But I don't think that, and I'm not going to speak for you, but I kind of going to insinuate it. I'll bet that there's no one in this room that wants to put the school district in a precarious position where one expense is going to push us over and tip us into that 3% threshold. I trust Mr. Tedeschi a whole lot. A lot of people in this community do. We heard it in public comment today. I'm hearing it from school sites, and you're going to talk to people at school sites and answer their questions. I spoke with the auditor in my role as board president, and we have the most CPAs of any school district that in California. We have folks auditing our books, internal auditors, external auditors. We have folks, this is public information. We're not hiding the ball. These are serious people doing serious work. Everything I see in here has my vote of confidence, and so I'll be happy to support the first interim. And then looking at how we plan long term. And I think, as Mr. Tedeschi said, those conversations are going to come this year. So thank you.
Rose, you had another comment, or a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to comment, and of course, Mr. Escobedo, you said it fully in terms of what, was presented to us, the information and such. I couldn't agree with you more. I do hope that I misheard, that from Trustee Caffrey, that we need like a line-by-line explanation on the interim. And I may have, misheard that. However, this has my full support, and I'm ready to hopefully move on. I'm sure that there are other concerns that we'll discuss in the other agenda item that we have in terms of the committee and such, but this has my full support. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple of comments. I want to express my appreciation also for the good work and the excellent explanations. I also want to draw attention to the fact that the issue of special education is a serious one that is not just affecting Santa Barbara Unified. It's affecting every school district in the United States. The percentage of students with IEPs is on the rise. The cost is on the rise. The availability of highly qualified employees that want to come and work and stay in a community, it's very difficult. And that's some of what you were talking about, the need to use contracted services, which are more expensive. We have peak programs. We have things that are trying to attract people to the district. We're working on housing that's trying to make it make more sense. We purposefully, as a board, stretched ourselves to the ability to give a meaningful wage increase for people that are trying to live in this community, so that we don't have young teachers that come to Santa Barbara USB and love it here and want to stay, and they get their master's degree and they come in and they're doing a great job, and they're spending 3 or 4 years and doing great work for us, and then they look around and go, I can never afford to live in this community, and they go elsewhere. And that causes that churn on the bottom end. Special ed, I would also suggest a thank you for the great work on your first interim budget book, and remind everybody that your work is being dovetailed at this point against the work of someone else. I can't wait to see what's going to happen when it's your work dovetailed against your work within the next year. I really appreciate where you're getting us on that. We mentioned the deficit spending, there's no question that when we approved the agreement last time, that we understood it was creating a structural deficit that would have to be dealt with. We had to make those difficult choices to say, can we really weather this? Can we do it and make it better and do what's right for the teachers and the people that need, and the classified employees that live in this community? And without the kind of support that the board is giving, I don't think there's a board member here that would have said if we couldn't do more, we wouldn't have. So those things are all in place. There are, I won't go on and on, but utilities, all like everything comes together. So I loved what I heard. I want to support the first interim, and I want to continue for us to improve and do better and understand how we can take a structural deficit and do more of what we did in this interim, and that's changed by 3 or 4% how much we have in reserves. So kudos and thank you. I appreciate it very much. If there are no other comments, I'd like to call for a motion. Trustee Munoz?
I'd like to make a, let me see, a motion to approve the positive certification of the first interim financial report for fiscal year 2025-2026.
All in favor? Nope. Oh, I need a second. Sorry. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Escobedo. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to take 10 minutes. Okay, 10-minute break. We'll be back. All right, we'll come back to order at 12:04, 9:04. And we are on item H2, Board Action on Student Discipline Education Code. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve Student Discipline Education Code 48918, case number 202-526-05 and 202-526-08.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I'm going to do a brief bit of agenda management. I'd like to put number 4 up next. We have our union president here from CSEA. This is on second reading of the sunshining approval of Santa Barbara Unified School District to reopen contract negotiations with the California School Employees Association.
Good evening, Board President Banning, board members, Superintendent Maldonado. This item is coming to you as our sunshine proposal for negotiations with CSEA. And in fact, upon approval, we will be ready to go and we'll have our first session with CSEA next week.
We have a comment? Yep. All right, Mr. Rivas, our CSEA president.
Yeah. So, yeah, Ken Rivas, CSEA president. And good evening, board members and the cabinet members. And I just like to say we really look forward to starting this negotiations, and I think that although I look at it as even though we may not go into interspace, but I always look at it as an interspace because I think that's really a good approach to negotiations. So again, I look forward to our coming negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this action item comes before the board. If you have any questions, happy to answer, but otherwise,
Are there any questions from the board? Any comments? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the Santa Barbara Unified District to reopen contract negotiations with California School Employee Association Chapter 37.
And a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. So our next item will go back to the item 3, the approval of amendment to resolution number 2024-25-32A, the Finance Committee establishing resolution.
Did you want me to just say
Go ahead.
that staff, as requested by the board, has prepared this item for your discussion and action?
Okay. I'd like to start with some opening comments regarding this. As we introduce the amended Finance Committee resolution this evening, I want to explain why this item is before the board and clarify what the resolution does and doesn't do. Over the past several months, the newly established Finance Committee has been presented with important information regarding the context of the district's current budget process and timelines. They've contributed thoughtful discussion and opinion about how the committee might best support the board within the scope of its authority. As with many newly formed board committees, initial rollouts often reveal implementation challenges that require refinement. This is a normal part of building effective governance structures, and it allows the committee to evolve into the productive advisory body that it is intended to be. As a board representative on the Finance Committee, and having attended every committee meeting, I know all members participate with genuine positive intent. School finance is inherently complex. I've heard it associated with the word Byzantine. Even with our expertise in this district and on the committee, the volume and technical nature of the information can make real-time clarification challenging. The amendments before us reflect the board's November direction to align the committee's operations with established governance best practices to ensure full Brown Act compliance and provide greater clarity for all participants. These adjustments will help create the conditions for the committee's future work to be thoughtful, impactful, and truly valuable to the board's fiscal oversight responsibilities. What does the resolution do? It strengthens Brown Act compliance. Recent committee actions were taken on items that were not properly agendized as action items, which under the Brown Act render such actions void. The amended resolution reinforces lawful meeting procedures to ensure all actions are transparent and enforceable. It clarifies the committee's strictly advisory role. Consistent with statewide best practices for board advisory committees, the resolution states that the committee provides analysis, discussion, and non-binding recommendations, but does not direct staff, initiate contracts, establish fiscal targets, or set independent priorities. Recent, well-intentioned but non-compliant outreach by committee members to outside consultants underscores why such boundaries matter. Contractual inquiries and negotiations must be initiated by district staff and approved by the board to protect the district legally and fiscally. Failure to comply with these statutory rules, even inadvertently, could expose the district to costly litigation. It also affirms that this committee exists to advise the board on financial matters. It clarifies that the committee operates as an advisory body, not as an independent oversight or advocacy body. It strengthens leadership accountability. The resolution affirms that the committee chair must be one of the board's appointed representatives. This is consistent with common governance practice for standing board committees subject to the Brown Act. This ensures that meetings are presided over by a trustee trained in open meeting law and accountable to the public for procedural compliance to ensure that the Brown Act and other governance issues that arose during the committee's early existence do not recur. It also formalizes a process for the board to remove members who fail to meet participation, governance, or conduct expectations, thereby safeguarding the integrity and effectiveness of the committee's work. What the resolution does not do: it does not reduce community involvement. Community members, labor partners, school site leaders, staff, and a student representative continue to serve on the committee, and committee members remain full voting participants. It does not change the committee's purpose or focus. The committee remains charged with reviewing financial information, analyzing budget processes, identifying risks and opportunities, and offering advisory recommendations to the board. It does not diminish transparency. In fact, these changes strengthen it by ensuring the committee operates fully within the law and without a governance structure that promotes clarity, accountability, and public confidence. The board's responsibility includes assuring that every advisory body of the district operates with integrity, within established governance boundaries, and in compliance with state law. These amendments reinforce that commitment and position the Finance Committee to continue its work in a way that is focused, lawful, collaborative, and ultimately highly valuable to the board and the community we serve. So, are there questions in regard to this or comments? Let's go with questions first. Public comment? Yes, I'm sorry, there are public comments.
I'm so sorry, I'm remiss. Yes, we have several public comments. First of all, I'll say the first three. Todd Voigt, Michelle Voigt, and York Shingle. Actually followed by Ken Rivas.
All right, thank you very much. So good evening.
Sorry, the mic.
Is that good now? I'll start over. Okay, good evening. My name is Todd Voigt. I am the chair of the Finance Committee, maybe for 15 more minutes. I've served since August of 2025. It's been a pleasure. Accepted this role after being nominated and confirmed by the board and elected by the committee during my very first meeting. The committee believed that appointing a community member as chair would help restore public trust in the district's financial oversight, a trust that has been eroding. I agreed to serve because I care deeply about this community and its future. I'm a volunteer with no political ambitions. My sole purpose is to provide sound advice and expertise for the benefit of our schools. Today, the board is considering a resolution, part of it, that would restrict a chair position to board members only. This proposal, if adopted, would undermine the independence of the Finance Committee and erode the very trust that we have worked hard to rebuild. Advisory committees exist to provide objective guidance. If the board controls both the committee and its leadership, that independence disappears. From a governance perspective, this is a serious mistake. Now, if the resolution passes, I'm hoping it doesn't, but if it does, and at least in terms of that portion, the chair will be either board member Caffrey or board member Banning. Should this passage occur, I strongly urge the board to select board member Caffrey as the chairperson. She has consistently demonstrated a commitment to addressing the district's financial challenges. By contrast, I would note that board member Banning opposed a committee goal I proposed to recommend to the board reducing the deficit by $3 million in year one and eliminating entirely by year two. So this was the first time that I proposed it. He did not support it. With the district losing over $20 million annually and facing potential receivership in 3 years, leadership that does not prioritize deficit reduction is unacceptable. Placing such leadership at the helm of the Finance Committee would be disastrous for our financial health. This decision is more than titles. It's about trust, independence, and fiscal responsibility. I urge every board member here tonight to vote against this aspect of the resolution. Keep the Finance Committee independent, keep the community's voice at the table, and most importantly, keep our district on a path towards financial stability. Our students, our teachers, and our entire community are counting on you. Please do the right thing, and I thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment.
Okay, Michelle Voigt.
Good evening. The Finance Committee was presented to the community as a way to bring transparency, independent oversight, and guidance to the board on the district's most complex financial issues. The chair is currently elected by the committee from any voting member. Right now, the chair is a community-based professional, financial executive, and a charter financial analyst, chosen for his expertise and credibility, and not politics. This resolution would end that model. It says the chair must be selected from the 2 board representatives. Community members, teachers, classified staff, and site leaders could still sit at the table, but they could never lead, no matter how qualified or trusted they are. The Brown Act does not require this. The Brown Act requires open meetings, notice, agenda, public comment, and minutes for standing committees. It does not say the chair must be a trustee. This is not about legal compliance. It's about a governance choice. A student-centered, data-savvy, accountable board faces hard numbers honestly, aligns resources to student outcomes, and protects public trust through real transparency and independent oversight, not by putting themselves in charge of the body meant to advise and scrutinize them. At a time when your own first interim shows serious structural deficits, a $20 million loss, and reserves sliding, that standard matters more now than ever. I urge you to live up to that standard tonight. Remove or amend that clause that limits the chair to trustees. Keep the principle that any voting member can be elected chair. At a time of serious financial risks for our students and our taxpayers, we deserve more integrity, more transparency, and stronger independent oversight, not less. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
York Shingle.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent, and Cabinet. I'm York Shingle, SBTA President and member of the Finance Committee. I'm just not sure what problem we're trying to solve with these changes to the structure of this committee. I understand the situation arose, but even with a shift in committee chair, that same incident still could have occurred. It doesn't feel like a change that helps us get closer to better financial decisions for the district, which is what we're trying to do. I look forward to the work we're diving into, but additional changes and hoops aren't going to help us get there. I really just am not sure I understand the need for these changes. We had a first interim report presented just a few minutes ago, and there's a lot of work to do. We need to work to make sure that they are closer to our actual expenses we end up spending by the end of the year so that we can properly budget to best serve our students. And I'm not sure that these changes are going to help us do that job better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Rivas.
Okay. Again, Ken Rivas, President for the Classified Staff, CSA. So I'm a member of that committee, and I've been so, like impressed as the collective that have come together, made up of the committee, the people on the committee members, and the board members. And it's been very helpful. And what I've experienced is that we're all learning together, and so that's been great. And we can probably come up with some solutions, but it's I don't see anything happening like really soon. This is something that's really going to take time, and so as regards to the structures, I would neither support or oppose what you're presenting. I have more of a question in line with Mr. Shingle there, and the thing is, we're all I see us as all equals when we come together in that meeting. I see us as all equals, and so I was just curious as to why the chair would actually be, and you kind of alluded to the reasons, Mr. Banning, why their chair couldn't be any one of us on that committee, but I kind of get it, but I'm still just kind of wondering about that. But that was my only comment, is that within the resolution is that one piece about who becomes the chair. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
That ends public comment.
Okay, no other comments. Do we have questions for board members? Trustee Caffrey, we'll start with you.
So I guess my first question is a process question for how this resolution came about, because I feel like when we wrote the initial resolution, I was very involved in writing the initial resolution, had meetings with the superintendent, and I know we are hopefully getting coaching from school board partners about empowered school board governance, and they talk a lot about school board members being part of, well, really actually the policy writers. And so the fact that basically a policy was created and that we didn't have any opportunity to work on it beforehand, I think I just wonder about the process. So my question is, why was the process different this time? Why didn't we have an opportunity as board members, especially one who was very, very committed to getting a finance committee? Why not have discussions before the resolution came to the board?
We had conversation that led to revisions. We are having conversation before the board at this moment. It has been brought forward due to certain level concerns about urgency. Other questions? We'll come back around. Anyone else? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, President Bannon, you had alluded to a situation that led to this revision. Was that situation a Brown Act violation?
Yeah.
I would say yes. There was a vote on an item on an agenda that was not agendized as an action item, and that's a Brown Act violation. The consequence of that is just that the action is void.
Trustee Caffrey.
So my question is basically, what kind of orientation could the Finance Committee get about the Brown Act? And could an orientation and a better understanding of the Brown Act prevent future Brown Act violations? And why is it that, I guess, why is it that we need to replace the committee head from any member within us because of a misunderstanding about the Brown Act when most of the committee members have never been on a Brown Act committee before?
I want you to know that it's in researching this situation, that what we have discovered is that it is not only common but standard practice throughout the state of California for a standing board committee subject to the Brown Act that includes board members as voting participants and produces formal recommendations to the board. It's standard practice for the committee chair to be one of the appointed board representatives. This is not something that is typical at all. As a matter of fact, in researching some of this, we discovered that the best practice summary that committee members should not chair the committee because the Finance Committee operates as an official board committee subject to the Brown Act. Best governance practice requires the committee chair to be a board member who holds a fiduciary accountability and legal responsibility for meeting conduct. Community members continue to play a central advisory role and may serve as vice chairs and other facilitators or work group leads. I also want to note that this is not just pulled randomly. These are from sources like County Offices of Education, CSBA, FCMAT, and common legal advisories that recommend present not as advisory, as baseline best practice, not as discretionary preference, and that common patterns have been observed across districts that have struggled with this same issue, and that pattern typically follows the line of the district launching a committee and appointing a community member as a chair in an attempt to demonstrate openness and shared leadership. Exactly what we wanted to do, exactly what we intended. And then in early meeting experiences, there is agenda setting confusion. There's boundary drift between the ideas of advisory and advocacy. There are difficulties with Brown Act procedures and public comment management challenges, misalignment with staff or board authority. And then the board or superintendent's office typically recommends a structural correction. placing a trustee in the chair role to stabilize governance. This isn't anecdotal to one or two districts. It's a common enough practice that governance consultants, superintendent mentors, board advisors, and county office trainers routinely describe it as a model that usually requires correction once challenges emerge. I believe we are in that exact position. And the decision to vote from within all members of the committee rather than knowing this in advance was unfortunate, but it is a correction that I feel is necessary. And I think that the comments about lacking transparency and all of that, it really, I don't see that it makes that much of a difference other than protecting the committee and the members of the committee and the staff and all of that. So I'm very strongly committed to working in this manner so that we can make this correction and protect the future of the committee.
So I have said in the past that I'm willing to change my mind, and I appreciate that information. I think it is very persuasive. I think it would have been really helpful to have it in the board memo as understanding what is the reasoning behind the change. Yeah. So I think that everything you say makes a lot of sense, and so I'm fine with that change. And I think it is useful when we're making changes like this to just have full information. So I have another question, but Trustee Beal, yeah. Okay. So thank you.
I'll respond. Thank you. And we're all learning. This is not an attempt to hide the ball in any manner. It's an attempt to protect the ball. Actually, Trustee Beal.
So I appreciate that explanation also, and like you said, this is our first. Like, I don't think it's our first Brown Act committee the district has ever had, but we were trying to make this committee something that is long-term and can really help the board. Question for you, since we're talking about the Brown Act, do the voting members, will they need to be trained on the Brown Act at this point? It seems like this is something I had to learn, right, as a board member. We have voting members on this committee, so that would probably be a question for our legal counsel. Do they need to be trained?
I think I know the answer, but come on. Yeah, let's do it. I think
because
it's
we
that
have
simple,
that,
absolutely.
we're making, yeah.
Can I also suggest that whether this is the first Brown Act committee in this district, it's the first Brown Act committee I have participated on or been in a district that had one. So there were some missteps in regard to understanding the risk that we were taking, and I don't even would say that it was a risk we knew about. It was just, in terms of putting this all together, it started maybe over a year ago with a discussion about wanting to have some committees, and this is the one that we invested the time and energy in, and I still support the need and the reasoning behind it. As I've said in the past, both here and in other places, this is a remarkable board. The fact that we have an incredible diversity on this group, that is the board's strength, and it can also be challenges. We are a board, however, that is fortunate to be politically aligned and all in the right place, in the same place about what we're trying to accomplish. So I want to say I really appreciate some earlier communication from Mr. Voigt and the comments here as well. And I just want to say this isn't meant to be anything other than trying to protect what I believe and have stated in the meeting itself, a committee that will have value that far outlives the first year of discussing what to do with it. And the way that's going to happen is to protect the kind of things that will allow us to continue to meet appropriately and mechanically. Sure.
May I ask another question just about how logistics? So basically, I'm wondering about how does the committee get information? So in the resolution, it says that the committee cannot direct, supervise, or assign work to district staff. Only the superintendent may direct the work of the staff, including staff who serve on the committee, except for routine support related to agenda preparation. So, for example, let's say the committee is interested in a particular subject. How is it that without directing the superintendent of business services, they can get that information to be able to do any analysis?
I'm going to try and answer that, and I hope that council will help me if I run astray. But I believe that what happens is the board would, the committee itself would make a decision about information that they want, and would represent that as and vote perhaps as a committee. Is this a recommendation that we want to make to the board to provide this information? So I think it may seem arcane and a roundabout, but I think what happens is that this is an advisory committee that when they have a recommendation that they agree upon by vote, by majority vote, or a recommendation, that vote simply allows that issue to come forward to the board for full discussion.
I guess my question is, I'm just randomly picking, what is the cost? That is inconsequential. Helmets. Okay, so let's say the committee said, we really are interested in helmets. Does that mean they need to go to the board and say, board, we want the data on helmets? Can you ask the superintendent of business services to get that data so we can do analysis?
You might just want to stay up there for a while.
Well, one thing that the amended resolution does is say that all of the same board bylaws and governance handbook applies to the committee as the same way and to the extent relevant that they do to the board itself. And so embedded within those regulations is the requirement that information requests be routed through the superintendent. So I think that would be the way it would happen unless and until everybody decides to do it differently.
And so how would a recommendation be routed through the superintendent rather than through through something in a open board meeting?
I think a data request.
Okay, a data request.
And I think that's already happened. Sometimes you ask Hilda for things that you want relevant to the committee, right? I think that's been happening.
Let's go around. Gabe, comment, not a question?
Comment, not a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You want me to go?
Sure.
Okay. I was just going to say, my comment is I think that's the most appropriate route rather than going to the board. It adds another item to our agenda. We're talking about shortening our meetings. I trust the discretion of Dr. Maldonado, but I also want to explicitly say we need to trust the discretion of Dr. Maldonado, meaning if the data that's being requested is determined to be too much and it's going to divert Mr. Tedeschi or his team's time away from their day-to-day job, as according to Dr. Maldonado, because she dictates their time, and we have set out goals for our staff and the district, and they have things that they need and responsibilities. I'm just saying I think that the appropriate way is to go through Dr. Maldonado, and then it's going to be on Dr. Maldonado to determine where that falls on the priority list, and also to go back to the committee and say, hey, this is what this request would take, and we just don't have the resources or the people power to make this happen. Is there another way that I can meet your desire or concern?
Okay. Anyone else? We'll get back to you. Did you have a comment or question?
I have a question and a comment. The first question is that I don't recall the Finance Committee being explained to us as a long-term committee, a long-term standing committee, as was mentioned earlier. And when the committee was established, I had expressed my concerns at that time about starting a finance committee prior to the hiring of Mr. Tedeschi. I can see that some of my concerns have materialized. I honestly was surprised to see a letter in the opinion section of the Independent regarding our committee, Finance Committee. I would not be surprised if the Finance Committee itself, what has occurred, and letter in the community and so forth, has had a negative effect on the morale of both our assistant superintendent and his staff. The importance of the morale of all of our staff, in my opinion, is most important. I highly value our department heads, assistant superintendent, I believe, right? And the staff, and such. And so I certainly support, correcting our step at this way, at this time. But I also want to know, want it clarified if this is a long-term committee, and if so, what is the reason for it to be considered long-term? I know initially we had discussion about, time-limited committees and or long-term committees.
I recall conversations about ad hoc, which are committees for a specific purpose that are temporary. Perhaps it was an assumption that when we talked about a board committee, a Brown Act committee, that it was a standing committee. That would be my interpretation, or what that was my expectation.
That it would be a long-term committee?
Yes,
Okay.
because we put it together as a Brown Act, it was a resolution. That's typically not something that happens with short-term, limited-term type of things.
Okay, I appreciate that
Dr. Beal?
clarification. Mhm.
Yeah, I think that was my understanding. We talked about other committees, and we really couldn't land on there being long-term committees, so we didn't move forward at that time with those. Board member Escobedo and I were at a conference at UCSB, and the person said something very profound, and it was talking about systems, and you can always point out the problems and try to fix and fix and fix, and that's a process. But this person actually talked about, instead of just sort of saying, let's keep fixing this thing and kind of making it it has a problem, let's fix this. It has another problem, let's fix this. That we really talk about what we want this committee to do. And that's where my comments are going to come from, because I think we chose to have this committee. We all had sort of an idea, and then I think what's happening is now we're like, what actually was that idea? And so I think of this as a board advisory committee. And when Mr. Tedeschi was presenting to us tonight, he's identifying deficits. And at least for those of us who went through 2 reductions in force, if not more, that word it creates real fear for us. We just have terror, because it's talking about, how do we maintain our reserve, whether it's, spending or it's personnel. So reduction in force is very particular to personnel. And the request we had at that time is, how can we have a discussion before we present a plan to reduce personnel? And for me, the Finance Committee is helping us understand things that we direct it to look at. So we say, well, we'd rather our reserve be 10% than 5%. How can we get there? We have a reduction in force, and we're thinking it's going to be about $2 million. What do we need to do to look at? So to have this committee so I think of this committee as being directed by the board to do a certain amount of research, and coming back to us and saying, okay, we did the research, and these are our thoughts on it based upon looking at the finances more deeply. That is my vision of this Finance Committee, and I think it could work for us. In that process of looking at the finances, I think we will have transparency and better understanding. And so, I didn't think of the committee as all of a sudden shining this bright light bulb on the finances for the last 10 years. I thought it would start to do that process. I know that Mr. Tedeschi is working on processes to make it more understandable and working on the reports and all that. But that's what I thought of it as a board committee. And so the question that comes up in my mind, question and comment, is, in order to make this committee work in a way that we feel we trust and we feel is effective for us as a board, should we set up a process where they are on the agenda and we say, we put on the agenda, we're going to ask the Finance Committee to look into X, Y, or Z, or to help us with the reduction in force. They have very directed work. And then they work with, I know that Mr. Tedeschi is on there, and then we agree as a group that this is the work we want the Finance Committee to do. And And I think what will come out of it is the stuff we talk about, like how can we afford these things? How can we build a better future? We have community members, you know. I think that's maybe a place to be at and to start with, my thought.
So I guess I just am going back to how the Finance Committee will actually work and asking Superintendent Maldonado for information. And do we put in the resolution a turnaround time for response? Or basically my concern is that it extends the length of time to get data to be able to do analyses. So, and for example, when Trustee Escobedo said, Dr. Maldonado may say that information is too difficult to get. I guess my question is then, can the Finance Committee say, well, that's information that should be at our fingertips. That means we need to have better systems in place to get information. Do you see what I mean? So like, I feel like I just want to know, how does the Finance Committee, how are they able to work and get sufficient information to make decisions, or not decisions, I'm sorry, advisory, like to give advice. They need to be able to have access to data. So that's my question, the process, spelling out more clearly the process for getting data.
That kind of leads me to my question about the role of Mr. Tedeschi on this committee. So if we task the committee, if we choose to follow that model and we say, we're going to have a reduction in force, it'll be at roughly $2 million because we've made reductions in other areas and we're left with this amount. And here, this goes to the Finance Committee. So in their discussion, they would need to ask, you know, which budgets are we going to look at, transportation, whatever, which personnel area. So I guess not being on the committee, I'm not sure how this works, but would he be able to advise the committee as to what information he can actually provide? Because he's in the middle of all this. And so, he, you know, I think to some degree there's a filter there. And I would like to think the request to the superintendent or designee would be reasonable at that point. I mean, I don't know.
Mr. Tedeschi, I think it would be important to express some of the things that maybe are being asked, because he's heard it. I mean, I'm not in the committee, right? And I would rely on his expertise more than it be coming to me, unless it was something he really thought this is way outside of my work.
So my thought on it was I would bring topics and we would, that I think or that have been brought to me as things to look at. And I think getting some clarity on how this should work will be helpful to me, because I came into this thinking, okay, I'll bring certain topics and then we'll go over them, and when we're going to talk about reductions, this is what we've got from principals. We have 12 options. What does this committee think? And it kind of went a different direction from there. So then I kind of like, well, okay, like how should this be going? You know, we talk about operational efficiency, and you know, there were different things that kind of like I wasn't expecting. So I got a little confused on how this really is supposed to go. I had a thought of my thoughts of how it would work, but I wasn't here through all the discussion when the committee was created. And so, which is too bad, because I think it would have been great for me to be part of those conversations as the original resolution was done. So however the board would like for this committee to go, I'm willing to support and do the work that needs to get done. I love the idea of being able to bring options and have the committee work together to work through and to then bring recommendations to the board. I think it brings that credibility of it's gone through a group of interested parties. And so, and we all will vote. Some may vote for, some may not vote for, but I think it'll have gone through that process. I liked that idea, knowing that a lot of that data would come from my office, and how to manage that is the question, I guess, for me, and what my role will be into, you know, requests from different places. Does that?
I'll just add that as I've been debriefing with Mr. Tedeschi, because there seems that there were two different directions that people were going. I'm just, from what he just explained, in order for then him to make the critical decisions, he would obviously come to me, because we also have requests from labor partners about data they need to prepare for negotiations, and or as we're in labor negotiations currently, there is a need to produce data for reports for what kinds of things are coming to us. And he's writing a first interim report, and he's trying to learn to create all of these relationships and learn how to run a Brown Act Standing Committee, which all of us are saying here tonight is new. So part of what I'm hearing and what I was hearing is there seems to be a direction some people thought they should take, as well as what he's thinking he should bring. I think what we're bringing here, I want to remove the superintendent leads the work as if I'm going to be a block, rather than I'm going to have to be discerning in helping to manage everybody's time and trying to see the big picture view of what's happening in the organization, depending on the month, depending on what the board is asking us to do, so that we manage that. So I just want to make sure that I tease out that difference, and that Mr. Tedeschi is the most expert person on that committee. To your point, Sunita, I completely agree. To be able to say to the committee, you know what, that's not going to work, or that's going to take longer, or that's not attainable, and even if we did do it, it's going to not lead to better decisions, and that the people in the committee trust Mr. Tedeschi as the one fiscal expert and manager of most of the data in the room. And I think defining some of these roles will also lead to better decision making of the committee, rather than having a little bit of that confusion that I've seen so far.
I'm hoping sincerely that we can see, and as Dr. Maldonado says, I have not been to the community meetings for obvious reasons. Ms. Caffrey and Mr. Banning have been the ones to, participate in that regard. And then we've had our union partners there and such. I would like to start, to do like basically more of a restart, right? So that we get more clarity, better communication, and so forth. We certainly are not, I'm going to go to the point of the letter. We're not trying to vote on a housekeeping power grab, et cetera, et cetera. We are trying to have a committee that advises the board, right, in terms of decisions and so forth. I am certainly adamant about respecting Mr. Tedeschi, who is our person in terms of finance, and, and having one of the board members lead that committee as the chair.
I wonder, I appreciate your comments, Dr. Beal, about directing the work of the committee. Because there's a sense that this amorphous committee was created and then just released into the wild without understanding what our expectations are, and maybe because we didn't understand what our own expectations were. So I do think that your approach there is the most important thing. What can we do as a board to say, we've got this, we have the resolution, we know the rules. What is it that we're wanting to learn and hear from the committee? And I'd love to hear more about how we go about getting from here to there. Let's go down. Let's just come from Gabe back up.
Carlos is on the committee.
Carlos, you have anything? He's actually a student member on the committee, so he's been to the meetings.
But he can't be here.
Yeah, well, maybe that would be the answer.
No, I don't have any comments at the moment.
All right, Ms.
I was just going to state the same thing, that I support Dr. Beal's idea. I think it would be actually a really healthy thing if every year it came back for a set of priorities for that academic year. And I imagine that something like, if we anticipate that we're going to have preliminary RIFs, reduction in force, that's one of the topics that we would give to Mr. Tedeschi to bring to the advisory committee to talk about if there are options. Like, we got this feedback, here are the options. I imagine that could be something. But I really like the idea of the board setting the parameters rather than the group themselves, because it is our responsibility as a board. We have the fiduciary responsibility, and I think it only makes sense to direct the work of the advisory committee to aid us in making those really difficult decisions where we get more perspectives than just the 6 or 7 of us.
Yes. Ms. Caffrey.
Oh, thank you. But so my question here is basically all that the Finance Committee said was that given that now we know we have a $20 million deficit this year, that we need to reduce our spending. That was one thing that the committee said. And the other was that how do we start understanding the effectiveness and cost effectiveness of our programs so that when we make decisions about what to keep and what not to keep, we actually have data like, is this program working, and what is the cost per pupil? Like, is this the most effective way to serve kids? Like, are we using every dollar to maximize outcomes for kids? So to me, that does not seem like a finance committee going rogue, like acknowledging we have a $20 million deficit. We have a 5% reserve next year. We need to figure out ways to save money. And we also have no information right now about the effectiveness of our programs. And furthermore, we don't have information about cost effectiveness. So I don't think the idea that the Finance Committee can't set goals, like looking at the numbers and seeing this huge deficit, and then also how is the board able to make good decisions about what to keep and what not? There's a missing informational piece. That to me seems totally reasonable.
Like Sunita and Gabe.
So I'm actually curious about a statement that Mr. Tedeschi made. So he said he had ideas for the Finance Committee, and he may have ideas as a board that we haven't considered. So I feel that there's going to be an interaction here, right? And, I can't imagine that when you're making budget cuts that you aren't going to incorporate things like staffing and return. And I feel that discussion has been mentioned maybe in notes to us, or that there are some assessments that need to be made. So I think at least for this first round, as we're just trying to get through January, February, and March, that maybe we do some very goal-directed things, and there some of that we would probably get feedback from Mr. Tedeschi that in order to make this decision, I might have to do some analysis, and I would hope that he would give that advice to the Finance Committee. And, and we do some things. Like I said, I think this process is going to bring transparency, to our finances. It depends on what we want. So I don't know. I think we can just let it evolve and see where it gets us. And there is going to have to be an interaction, I believe, between the board and Mr. Tedeschi for him to maybe say to us, well, you want more information on reduction in force, so I am going to need to do research in X, Y, or Z. And we're like, okay, go for it. So that kind of conversation, not, we are directing it, but then Mr. Tedeschi turns to us and says, this is what I would like to do with the committee to do this. And we're like, okay, sure, this is what you need to do. So
Gabe's next.
Yes, I like that idea. And I was going to say that if there were a topic that, Ms. Caffrey, that you wanted the advisory committee to take on, I think that's when that item comes to us for us to direct, like its focus, that'll be your opportunity to advocate. I think it is a very strong a strong direction from the board to give to the advisory committee, because I'm reading the tea leaves, but I hear a concern about getting the necessary information needed to the committee to make decisions or provide advice to the board. But if it's coming from the board saying this is what we want the advisory committee to focus on, it focuses the need for data, and Dr. Maldonado's hearing it and knows that it's a priority for the board as a whole rather than one or two of the board members. And that's really what we're trying to move towards as a board, is board direction to staff on how they spend their time, because all 5 and 6 of us could go to Dr. Maldonado and say, hey, I want this data, I want this data, I want this data, I want this data. And it sends our staff out and it eats up their time, and their time is precious. So I do like the idea of the board setting what the priorities are, what the focus is, and it gives a mandate to Dr. Maldonado to then prioritize that in the day-to-day workload.
Did you have something else?
I mean, I guess in the initial resolution, we asked the committee to understand our current spending. And right now, all we know is that 85% of our budget is staff, but we don't understand the real cost drivers. So I feel like we should continue with what our current mandate is as a finance committee, which is understanding our current spending. Like 85% staff, but what does that actually mean? And like, do you see what I mean? I don't think we have a good understanding of our current spending. And with, for example, our drops in enrollment, how are we staffing our schools? Questions like that. We don't really know as a board yet. And I think those are the kinds of things that a finance committee could help us understand.
So do you think, as part of your working on whatever thing we decided on, you would be educating your finance committee about these items? And I mean, I feel like in a committee meeting, there's a conversation that goes on. It's not a one-way discussion.
Honestly, that was my plan. And I think what happened was it maybe started too slow. So the staffing, for instance, I had Dr. Becchio come do a presentation on staffing, because understanding master scheduling is a really important piece to understand staffing at the secondary level. And I don't think many members of the committee understand how that works. I didn't really understand it till I got here. I understand it now, but it's a complicated piece to really make a judgment on staffing, and like adding a 7th period or those, like there's an educational piece that has to happen for the committee to be effective and make recommendations, was my perspective. And I know that there are other areas that are easier to look at, say, hey, we need to look at this area, and that makes sense. But I think when it comes down to staffing, there's different pieces to it that are complex, that there has to be an educational piece to it for the committee to really get on the same level of understanding how it works. And so I thought John did a great kind of overarching presentation on how we determine staffing levels, because then my thought was the follow-up conversation to that would be tweaking that. How do we make that look? Enrollment's this, how do we make changes? But my understanding was that was too high level, let's move on to something else. And so I kind of got a little confused about it. So it's like, so we kind of went a different direction. So I guess my perspective was to start off with educational piece, which honestly is why we haven't reported back to the board yet, because we are still in this learning component of the pieces of identifying the areas to be looked at. And so I've brought, I think, transportation, we brought staffing as some of those areas that have come up to look at. Well, you can't make a judgment on what to do with transportation until you understand kind of what we're doing. And so that was my thought process for how that would work. And I don't know, I'm happy to go the direction that works, but I think the educational piece is important.
Rose?
Yes, in terms of the committee, and thank you for sharing that with us, in terms of what, the presentations that you had in the committee meetings and so forth. I just have a question about how the chair will be selected of the under the new. Oh, that's yeah. Well, okay, I'll hold that up.
Assuming that the resolution changes are approved. This is a question. Is it a vote from within the committee of which board rep or is it a vote on the board? I don't know that answer.
The committee bylaws outline the process for voting on committee officers. So I think that they just take a majority vote of the committee, and so it would just be that the pool of candidates would be limited to the board members.
So one question, we have two community members who were appointed to the committee who are both financial experts. And one question I have in terms of the education piece versus the analysis piece is, for example, when we've had things presented to us, we see spreadsheets on a screen, but like we see staffing spreadsheets. But we have expertise about actually doing analysis or like having analysis presented to us of those numbers. Basically, we're just seeing raw data that doesn't give us any real, basically we can't figure out anything based on the data that is being presented to us. And so that's why I go back to data access and being like allowing financial analysis by either like the finance committee asking for financial analysis based on the data that we see on the screen, or having the committee be able to do data analysis ourselves. Because I just feel like the education piece is huge. I totally agree. It's super complicated. And you all understand the ins and outs. But like when we see data presented in this way, we can't make any kinds of interpretations of that data or really learn what is going on. Yeah. So my question is basically, how does the finance committee, it all goes back again to how do we get sufficient information to be able to make good recommendations to the board?
Go ahead.
A comment I would make again is to remind ourselves that we have an assistant superintendent of business services in the committee. And that's their level, that's their expertise.
But the question is like, how do we make sense of the data? Like when we saw staffing data, it's just raw data, not any, it doesn't give you any real insight.
And we can go back and forth for, an
I'm just going to, we're drifting so much away from the resolution one second. That I think it's actually more helpful to just focus on the language of the resolution. More of what Ms. Caffrey is talking about is like the mechanics, and I trust that Mr. Tedeschi will be responsive to the needs of the group and be able to present the information in a way that is going to be digestible. I just brought it up earlier. He has a knack for this. I trust in his abilities to do that. What I would hope is that we can focus more on just the mechanics of what's in the resolution, the words, and that brings me to the final question. Then I'm going to be pretty close to making a motion, but this is going to be for Ms. Powell, is for the board to set those priorities. If that's what the majority of the board wanted to do, would we have to add language in this resolution to do so, or is it enough to hear from the majority of the board that that's what we would like to see?
Which specific priorities do you mean? Or do you mean, because it does list 4 priorities. I think if you wanted additional ones, you would want to specify them.
Yeah, so and Dr. Beal, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more of, I think ideally once a year, this item would come to the board and we would be able to set the focus for the committee for that year.
Then I think you would want to amend. So right now the clause is, and be it further resolved that the goals of the committee from the time of its establishment until amended by the board shall be. So I think you could either just, remember to bring it back a year from now, or you could actually set within that phrase the end date of those goals and the date that you would come back and talk about new goals.
Dr. Beal. Sorry.
So I guess I would just have a question. Like if we turn to, we just need nicknames for each other, right?
That's
So-
fine with me.
So if we felt like, okay, we want the focus to be reduction in force, that's not necessarily our four board priorities for the, right? So, what I was thinking, and this is just my thought, is that, do we agendize the committee, that we discuss that they're working on this? Are we going to we're going to ask them to do this if something comes up mid-year, and we have to make a big budget cut, then we set in the agenda that we're going to task the finance committee for looking for, a pocket of money or where we can reduce services. So do we agendize this committee for us to have a discussion to either receive a report from them or to we give them time, basically?
Having been in the meetings, I think the idea of agendizing something from the board that gives direction is pretty important, because if we say go back next Tuesday and just change your chair, and I still don't know what the committee is tasked to do and how they're moving forward with it. So that's my level of confusion. I've read this a couple of times. I think we need more clarity about what it is the board is saying they want the committee to accomplish. Yeah, please.
So, what I understood this to be was to set the parameters of establishing the Brown Act, the legality, and that a board member needs to lead it. The 4 priorities that you have in the first page, or the 4 goals of the committee, were to conduct the introductory review of the current budget, familiarize with current budget. I'm just reading it really high level. Formulate recommendations. And that the new language is that the assistant superintendent of business may engage the committee in gathering feedback on potential budget decisions as appropriate. I realized we didn't do red and black. So that's why I wanted to point out this 4th bullet. The first 3 were from the original resolution. The 4th bullet is more in line with what Mr. Tedeschi is saying tonight and what you're proposing, which is hearing the board ask for direction, which is what typically is the process, right? The board gives us direction, turns to me. We want the staff to do X, Y, and Z. I hear from the board, and typically I'll ask for clarification. He or whoever is tasked with going to get that. So this 4th bullet, I think, captures in an umbrella way that it could be agendized by the board to have that direction given to the superintendent and staff. Or it could be that we have a discussion, you give that direction, and then we move. So the question, Joanna, is does it have to be agendized for the board to give me direction to give to the finance committee, or can it be done in a conversation where we decided this topic came up, but you know what, that should be taken to the finance committee?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay, all right.
I was just going to say, as long as, and that kind of relies on a continuity of leadership to remember that this is supposed to come back to us for direction. So maybe it's added to the governance calendar, and that's our annual reminder that it needs to come to us. I would feel comfortable with that, and I'm seeing a nod from the majority. So with that, I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to motion to approve the amendment to resolution number 2024-25-32A, Finance Committee establishing resolution.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. That brings us to item I1, acceptance of donations. I have a motion.
I move to accept donations for December 11th, 2025 with gratitude.
Second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Last agenda item is the consent agenda. Is there any request to pull items? Any questions or clarifications? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
In a second?
I second the motion.
I second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We have Coming events, future agenda? We're done, we were done with all. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if we have colleagues from Santa Barbara City College, so I don't know if there was an item that you were. Thank you for being
in the
here.
Consent item, yeah, let's go.
In the consent item.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah, it's 18 minutes before we have to vote to extend it. All right. Yep. Are there coming events that you want to reference, or they're in? And any requests for future agenda items? Okay, you have the governance calendar to rely on. At this point, our next meeting is on, our next regular meeting is on Tuesday, January 13th. We also have a meeting on the 27th of January. Quick. We're adjourned at